Our protagonist was walking through a beautiful village. On his left and right were many food stalls, each selling something more flavorful than the previous. The yellow-haired boy took a long look at some food and trinket stalls and read the menus of each stall. The protagonist read that one sold balloons, another sold tasteful fish, and one other sold ramen. He smiled at the thought of ramen. Ramen is the food of gods, thought the yellow-haired child, his mouth watering at the thought of having a delectable noodle. The whiskered child frowned at some of the shopkeepers. A lot of them looked at him with scowls, while others didn't even seem to look at him. Those that didn't even seem to be affected by his presence were surely going to get pranked when he had the time, of course. It was only when he walked up to the stall that he was really affected by the looks of the shop owner. "What are you doing here, demon? Haven't I already told you once to get the hell away from my shop?" The owner of this particular stall yelled at the demon. Frowning, he looked at the shopkeeper. He was fat, probably obese. He was short too, not over 4'10". He had a bowl cut, which made the boy throw up in his own mouth. And the use of vulgar language didn't help his case, probably made it worse in the ramen-loving child's eyes. "Sorry, mister." The boy was looking for a name tag or just something that gave him a hint at his name. The boy wondered why nobody sold him any food or called him a demon. Maybe he would go and talk to his old man about it. "The name's Nunya. Kid, now get out of my shop," screamed the obese man, which made Naruto scram with his tail between his legs. After a couple of more stalls that looked like they sold tasty food, he was saddened to a high degree. He was tired of getting rejected from buying food, so he started walking, wandering around with no specific destination. As the blond boy was walking, he was looking at his feet, so he paid no attention to where he was walking. After getting lost on the road of life, he finally looked up, which alerted all his senses that he wasn't anywhere that he knew. He looked around a couple of times before he realized that he was indeed lost. The boy scratched his chin. Maybe he could walk backwards or towards the opposite way he was going, and theoretically speaking, he should be able to find where he was originally at. It was only what felt like half an hour of walking from the same direction that he realized he was actually lost, and that going back the same way he came from wasn't working out. The boy sighed out through his nose. He started to just walk, not entirely looking for a clear destination. The young man noticed that it was getting late after another half an hour and that it should be 8 p.m. very soon. The young fellow started to realize that someone was following him. Only when the boy turned around did the person stop his movement and acted like he was reading something or rather fiddling with his fingers. By the look of the man, he would have to be at least in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. He was very bulky, so unlike the shopkeeper, a lot of that man's weight was definitely muscle. The man had a scar running along his face, which made him look somewhat cool to the 5-year-old. But he looked drunk because he thought that the almost 6-year-old believed that he wasn't following him. It was after just 10 minutes did the yellow-haired child get annoyed with the adult that he finally spoke out. "Sir, what are you doing following me?" he asked the obvious question. The older man looked surprised that he was caught. Now, looking at him, the boy could tell he wasn't anything more than a civilian. "What do you mean? Hiccup, I'm not following you, I'm just walking," the older man said, slurring most of his words. It was obvious to the boy now that he was clearly drunk. The young boy got annoyed by his clear lie. "I might be 5, but I'm not an idiot, sir. I can clearly tell you're following me. No reason to lie about it." The boy with the weird birthmark said out loud, his voice laced with annoyance at the sheer audacity of the lie. The 40-year-old drunk glared dagger at the younger individual. "Are you, Hiccup, calling me a liar, boy? I know a demon isn't calling me a liar," screamed the man, with hostility lacing his tone. The boy could clearly read the air and started to run out in a sprint. He was going to try to find the Hokage's office, which, by the look of it, shouldn't be far off as his surroundings started to look familiar again. The man also started to sprint at the young boy. The old man wore a scowl on his face. "Were you running? Hiccup, I'm not done talking to you." The boy could finally see the stall that he once passed by with the mean owner. All he needed to do was go to the next left, and he should be at the Hokage's office. The young boy looked back and saw that the man chasing him stopped. He smirked at him and stuck out his tongue. The boy had finally managed to reach the Hokage's tower. The young boy finally stepped inside the buildings. Taking a look at the huge building, he walked up to the receptionist, who took one glance and scowled. "What do you want, brat?" the woman asked him. He looked back at her with a scowl equaling hers. "I'm here for Air Hokage-sama," stated the young boy, who almost tripped over his own words. The woman's eyes slightly squinted at the sight of him before sighing. She buzzed a ringer that sat right at her desk. "Hokage-sama, the brat, Naruto, is here to see you." "Ooh, Naruto, I'm sorry, but I can't do anything about it. My hands are full. Don't you see how much paperwork I have?" said an old, yet familiar voice. Inside this particularly huge room was a desk. Flanked by each side were bookcases. On the desk were 2 stacks of paper. On the left and right of said stacks of paper were books with many titles. On the receiving end of the verbal beating was a young boy with bright, vibrant, spiky yellow hair. Plastered on his face was a scowl, turned pout. But old man, you promised dash. A lot of people promise a lot of things, Naruto. I'm sorry, but I can't possibly help you. My hands are tied. I can't just make people like you. The man known as Hiruzen Sarutobi, the god of shinobi, apologized to the young boy, who couldn't be older than 5. Now looking at the old man, he wore a red and white haori, with a funny red hat with a kanji meaning fire. He, too, wore a frown on his face. The old man had a look that said he was far wiser than any before him and even more strong than he looked. "I am sorry, Naruto." Hiruzen was caught off by the yellow-haired. "No, you're not sorry. You'll never understand. You're loved everywhere. You'll never understand my pain, Hiruzen," screamed the 5-year-old, who quickly, after saying his piece, walked out of the office. Hiruzen seemed to age by a couple of years. A sigh left Hiruzen's mouth. His hands were lifted into the air in a motion to bang them on the desk, although his hands quickly fell to his side in frustration. A voice came out from one of the 4 corners of the room. This voice sounded a lot younger than the old man, but older than the child who recently left the office they both resided in. "You have to apologize, Hokage-sama." Hiruzen's ears twitched for a second before he got up out of his comfortable chair, went over to another desk in his office, took out a key from his pocket, and opened up one of the drawers. Hiruzen sighed once more, pulling out a bottle of sake. He walked over to his desk, pulled out his chair, sat down, and pulled himself in. Hiruzen waited for a good minute and opened up the bottle of sake. Furthermore, he took a long swig. His regrets and fears were left behind in a cold, solitary part of his mind. He took another swig before he looked to the left of his room. If only it was that easy, Kakashi, if only it was that easy. Another swig was taken from the alcoholic beverage. "I understand it is hard, Hokage-sama, but the least you can do is apologize." The man's presence was now fully noticed by the old man. The man named Kakashi finally showed himself with a dog mask. He wore the regular umbu attire, baggy pants where they were pulled in once they reached the socks. He wore a small amount of armor, /in armor for some of the British people, and had a short sleeve shirt that clung on his body tightly, so you could easily see the well-developed muscles. The man known as Kakashi had a strict, yet depressing feeling around him. Hiruzen smirked and shook his head. "And say what, Kakashi? Sorry, Naruto. I'll show favoritism and go against the wishes of the council. You know what will happen when I go against the council, right? Kakashi, do you realize the repercussions if I went against the council?" Hiruzen asked, almost out of curiosity, rather than looking for an answer. Kakashi just stood there quietly. No rebuttal seemed to surface in Kakashi. Hiruzen sighed for what felt like the umpteenth time today. "If I keep sighing like this, I think I might become like Shika." Hiruzen chuckled lightly at his joke and took another swig of his bottle. Realizing it to be almost empty, took one last swig of the bottle before he threw it away in the trash bin next to his desk. "I am sorry, Kakashi. Today has just been a little rough. I was pushed by the council once again to decide Naruto's fate. They know I won't budge on the subject, yet they still try," Hiruzen stated with annoyance. Kakashi shook his head, albeit not visible to the normal eye. "Kakashi, Would you be of help and fetch Naruto? I would like to apologize to him. Maybe me and him could go out for ramen, as my treat of course, Hiruzen said with a smile plastered on his face. The only signs of Kakashi leaving the room were the leaves falling to the floor and a loss of a chakra signature. Ooh, we could see Naruto walking through some green foliage. Occasionally, a frustrated sigh would come out of our protagonist's mouth. He walked up to a tree and punched it with what looked like all his strength. Naruto slumped down next to the tree. On days like this, not even a bowl of ramen could fix his mood. It was days like this not even a friend would know could fix his mood. Sometimes, Naruto would just want to cry in a corner and forget about his life as a whole. Hell, leaving this damned village wouldn't be far off the truth, but those were only thoughts on rainy days. But Naruto learned at a young, tender age of just for that crying gets you nowhere, especially if no one cares about the person that is crying in the first place. Crying doesn't do anything for you, except waste precious water from your body. It was then, to the left of Naruto, a twig cracked under the weight of something. This alerted Naruto, finally paying attention to his surroundings. He stood up. Naruto could feel something, or rather someone watching him from all sides. He felt cornered, yet had all the space in the world. It was then that a kunai came flying out of the same foliage surrounding Naruto. He tried to dodge the kunai to the best of his ability, yet he was still scratched by the flying knife. Naruto seethed. He clenched his fist. Naruto grabbed the kunai that landed on the tree that he was originally sitting on. He gripped the kunai in a reverse grip. One of the assailants charged out of the shadows. A red glint shone from Naruto's eyes as he threw the kunai at the assailant. The assailant dodged to the right. He was only met with a tree, almost knocking into it, if it weren't for his quick reflexes. Naruto took off into the bushels. Naruto cursed. If only he weren't stupid enough to run into the forest where no one was near in at least 300 meters. Another kunai flew past him, nearly cutting his thigh. Naruto grabbed the kunai that was flung past him and stuck in a tree. He jumped and looked back. For black figures with masks on were chasing him. They all were wearing unidentifiable masks and Kumo village headbands. Naruto breathed a sigh through his nose. There was no way he could beat these guys on his own, so he would have to compromise and make a huge distraction. His opportunity arrived when one of the unknown shinobi went to throw an exploding kunai. The kunai was thrown towards his head. Naruto, pulling up his kunai to deflect it, deflected the kunai towards the air. The kunai exploded, making a huge firework-like show. Naruto smiled. His plan worked, but that didn't mean that he shook off his assailants yet. Naruto looked behind him to see that his attacker had stopped moving. Confusing Naruto, he looked in front of himself and almost didn't notice the cliff that was just a meter in front of himself. With the speed he was going at, he wouldn't be able to stop himself from running directly off the cliff. As Naruto finally reached the cliff, he closed his eyes. He knew this was going to hurt. Hell, he would probably die, but at least he will die knowing he doesn't have to deal with the torture of the village anymore. Maybe everyone would be better off if I would just die, thought Naruto, finally accepting the end of his short story of life. It was only after what felt like an hour that Naruto reopened his eyes to see that he was, in fact, not dead and was hanging from the cliff from which he almost fell off. Naruto looked up to his savior and saw a man who had black hair and wrapped in bandages were his right arm and his right eye. He was also wearing a robe similar to the Hokage's, but his was just black and white rather than the traditional red and white. "Are you okay, little boy? Am I hurting you in any way?" asked the man in a, what sounded like, sincere tone. "Yeah, old man, I'm fine. I think I would feel better if you pull me up, though," Naruto said, exasperated. The old man chuckled and quickly pulled Naruto up before he lost his grip. "How did you save me, old man? I for sure thought I was a goner there." Naruto grinned and scratched the back of his head. "I was in the area and saw the convenient explosion that signaled some of my attention. I just so happened to be right here at the right time." Naruto got suspicious of the old man's words. Naruto thought that was just too believable to be true. One more question. How did you beat them all up? And where are they? Naruto asked curiously. How would one be able to beat them all so fast in such a short period of time and still be able to catch him before he fell to his death? The old man turned around and started to walk. Naruto watched the old man with a keen eye. Are you coming? Naruto scratched the back of his head again and hurriedly followed the mysterious yet kind man. Yeah, hold up, wait for me. Danzo grinned. Plan 1 completed. You know, Mr. Danzo. My name is Danzo, the old man named Danzo said. Naruto nodded. Cool. My name is Naruto. Naruto screamed out. You still haven't answered my question from earlier, though. Naruto looked at the back of Danzo's head whilst waiting for an answer. I just shot out a fire jutsu and voila, Danzo stated, while also making hand signs to add to the effect. Naruto snorted at his funny hand signs. So, where are we going? Naruto asked out of curiosity. Danzo just pointed ahead. We're going to my house. There I'll get your wounds patched up, and you should be all right to go on with living. Naruto nodded at Danzo's explanation. It got quiet after that, before Danzo came out with a random question. So, Naruto, have you decided yet if you want to go to the Ninja Academy to become a shinobi? Danzo just waited for an answer. Hell yeah, shinobi are cool. I want to learn how to make jutsus and walk up walls and jump across buildings. Naruto abruptly stopped his rant. I also want to not be weak. I don't want that to ever happen again. If only I was stronger, I wouldn't have risked my life and almost died, Naruto said depressingly. Danzo nodded at his answer, expecting it. So, what are you going to do after this experience? Danzo asked. He knew the answer already, but he wanted to know if Naruto knew it. Well, of course I'm going to train, and I will become even stronger than all the Hokages before me. But in order to do that, I have to train hard every day. Naruto yelled with compassion. Danzo smirked at Naruto's remark. Just as fast as Danzo smirked, it fell just as quickly to a passive demeanor. If you want, I could give you tips and help you along the way. Naruto couldn't sense any malicious intent in Danzo's voice. Plus, the more help the better, especially if it was coming from somebody who easily beat the people who not even himself could have even dreamed of beating. Okay, Sensei Danzo. Danzo shook his head at Naruto's new name for him. Danzo abruptly stopped in his steps. We're here. Time to get you patched up and ready for training. Naruto nodded, but was confused soon after realizing that there wasn't a house in sight. Sensei Danzo, what do you mean? There is no house. Danzo smiled at Naruto before he grabbed on Naruto's shoulder and did a cool hand seal and yelled the word Kai, release. Naruto's eyes soon widened to huge proportions after seeing a house appear out of thin air. The house, though, wasn't all that special. 2 stories, looked like any normal Konoha house to Naruto. Danzo started to walk to the front door, Naruto falling in behind him. Once they managed to reach the house, Danzo opened the door for both of them to walk into. Naruto cautiously walked in because this was new territory, and for what he knew of Konoha, which wasn't much, he could tell they were far from the village. Make yourself at home, while I go get some bandages and some rubbing alcohol, Danzo quickly said before he left the living room into one of the many hallways. Naruto was amazed, because from the outside the house looked small, from the inside the house looked a lot bigger. Naruto looked for a couch that looked the most comfortable. As soon as he saw his target, he sat down and closed his eyes. He had to think of a training regime, so when he does go to the academy, which should be in 3 years, /N. I'm saying you start at the academy at the age of 8 and graduate at the age of 12 because it isn't the war era anymore, so they bumped up the age for children to actually have a childhood. Another thing is this is my fanfic, so yes, stay mad. A couple of minutes later, Naruto was stirred from his thoughts when he saw Danzo walk back through one of the hallways with a bandage and rubbing alcohol. Naruto prepared himself for what was going to be a slightly painful experience. Danzo walked over to his couch and kneeled down. He grabbed Naruto's pant leg and pulled it slightly up when he saw an almost fully healed wound. Danzo could have sworn those kunai were laced with poisoning. Naruto awaited as Danzo finally put on some of the alcohol and finally the bandage. Danzo sat back up and looked at Naruto. It should heal pretty fast now. How are you feeling? Naruto nodded his head, signifying that he felt better than before. Danzo came out with another question. Do you know what your training regime is? If not, I could help you with that. Okay, well, I got his wake up at 7:00 am. 7:00 eat breakfast. 7:30 am practice 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer dash for the next 3 years. I'll increase the exercise as time goes, and it gets easier. 10:30 am chakra control. Don't know how I'm going to improve that, but I heard it's good. 11:30 am eat lunch. 12:00 p.m. ninjutsu practice, although I don't have any ninjutsu to practice though. 2:00 p.m. taijutsu practice. I'll go through the library to find a taijutsu or just get the basics and improve there. 3:30 p.m. I'll work on anything that I haven't thought of already. 5:00 p.m. eat dinner. 6:00 p.m. study. 10:00 p.m. sleep. Naruto told Danzo. Danzo looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. In curiosity, Danzo asked, why not Jinjutsu? Naruto frowned. Because Jinjutsu is not cool. Naruto yelled dramatically. Danzo would have to disagree wholeheartedly, but Naruto didn't need to know that yet. Well, I guess it doesn't matter now, since you have a huge chakra capacity and it's only going to get larger. Naruto nodded sagely, like he knew what Danzo was talking about. What are you going to do for the 3:30? Do you have any ideas? Danzo asked, just out of curiosity. If it were up to him, he would say he would leave it to something more relaxing, like Fuinjutsu, or he could practice Kenjutsu there and do Fuinjutsu for his studies. I really don't know. I was hoping you could help me with that. Danzo could tell what Naruto was trying to do, and it would work. Well, you could do Kenjutsu for the 3:30, and for your studies, you could do Fuinjutsu. Naruto looked at Danzo. The question was there, so Naruto didn't have to even ask for Danzo to already know what was going to be asked. Kenjutsu, or Bukijutsu, is sword/weapon arts. Fuinjutsu is a sealing art. You can make your everyday exploding tags, and you can make stuff like sealing scrolls from just a few jerks of the hand. Danzo explained as simply as he could. He didn't want to make it too complicated because he didn't know if Naruto was advanced in his studies. Sound cool, Naruto added after a minute of silence. Danzo nodded at Naruto's comment, agreeing wholeheartedly. Well, it seems as if it's getting late. I believe it is time to leave. Get some good sleep tonight for your training tomorrow. Danzo was rudely interrupted when the front door came flying open and the Hokage, flanked by 4 Umbu, came rushing in. Naruto, are you okay? Did Danzo hurt you? Hiruzen asked in a semi-serious voice and a semi-grandfatherly voice. Yeah, old man. I was just talking to Danzo about my training, after I was saved by him from a bunch of shinobi who had Kyumo shinobi headbands, Naruto said laxly, who was oblivious to understanding the situation. It's okay, Hiruzen. I wouldn't hurt little old Naruto. All I did was save him from a bunch of Kyumo shinobi and patch him up at my house. Although his wound healed faster than I would have thought so, Danzo added as an afterthought. Hiruzen looked at Danzo suspiciously, understanding that Danzo was a keen, slimy weasel and that whatever he did had an underlying meaning to it. Hiruzen rubbed the sides of his head. Since this matter is over, Naruto, please go back to your condo. It is very late out. Hiruzen finished talking, and Naruto started to walk towards the door. Naruto, remember what I told you. Those were the last words Naruto heard before he walked outside the house. He was tired, and his bones felt weak. He felt as if he would crash any minute now. Seems like the adrenaline was finally leaving him, and his wrapped wound finally seemed to mention its presence as he felt a sting of pain coming from his thigh. Ooh. Danzo, what did you tell Naruto? And I swear, if you were manipulating little Naruto, I will cut your head off your shoulders myself. Hiruzen said seriously, pulling out a scroll, putting chakra into the seal, and a sword popped out of it to add to the effect. Hiruzen also sent out a considerable amount of killing intent, which made 2 of his Umbu flinch and stirred uncomfortably in their spot. Danzo, unfazed, kept up an indifferent disguise. I didn't do anything wrong. Hiruzen. All I did was encourage young Naruto to start his training a little early. Hiruzen scowled at Danzo's explanation. But Danzo, he needs to have a childhood. We aren't in the war era anymore, dash. Before Hiruzen could finish, Danzo slammed his cane down on the floor in annoyance. You're too naive, Hiruzen. No child who has a bijou, chakra beast, will ever have a normal childhood. Danzo quickly raised his voice, but as fast as it was raised, it was even faster that he calmed down to his normal passive mask. Hiruzen pulled out a pipe and lit it with fire chakra. He quickly took a puff and blew it out, making a Konoha sign. He sighed. I understand your concerns. Hiruzen emphasized the concern, but it's fine. Anyways, what ideas do you have, Danzo? How do you want to help young Naruto? Danzo quickly answered, Easy, just give him to me. I'll train him. Hell, I'll even allow you to watch me. With such potential, it shouldn't be wasted, especially on someone like Naruto. Danzo smiled for a split second. He saw Hiruzen actually considering his suggestion, which was a first. And why should I do such a thing, Danzo? You could still manipulate him, if you so pleased. Just because I am watching you, doesn't mean that you can't do anything about little Naruto while my back is facing you. Hiruzen's words made Danzo frown, but Hiruzen wasn't done there. Another thing is, I can't always be there, as I am a Hokage after all. Danzo knew that Hiruzen said that, to rub it in his face because he knew that was his dream, becoming Hokage. So who will watch you train young Naruto day and night, whilst I am signing papers? Hiruzen questioned, which got Danzo to think of countless people who he knew Hiruzen trusted that could watch over him train Naruto. How about Kakashi? He has the Sharingan. And how about somebody like a Hyuga too, to make sure that no matter what, they'll see whatever happens and whatever trick you may think I pulled. I even heard that Kakashi grew fond over young Naruto. Danzo started with a faux smile, which only added to Hiruzen's annoyance. You could even get the old toad to inspect Naruto with his seals if you have to. Just let me train him, someone like Naruto, who has the potential to achieve great things. With his lineage in the beast, he should be trained. Danzo finished, which made Hiruzen close his eyes, probably in thought. Minutes passed, and only then did Hiruzen finally open his eyes. Oh Lord, I think I'm going to regret this. Okay, fine. Only under my surveillance and Kakashi's, though. I will go find the Hyuga, and he will go to the academy. Naruto will graduate as a genin when he reaches the age of 12, Hiruzen said. What he wasn't expecting was Danzo to give him one of the biggest smiles he's seen in a long time. Also, this made Danzo stop in his tracks. If you even hurt Naruto, I will kill you myself. Any missions you put him on, I know you, Danzo. They must be reported to me and must be under B rank. Danzo nodded at the requirements. You won't regret this, Hiruzen. He'll be the next god of shinobi in the world, stated Danzo with the most emotion that he has mustered in a long time. Don't make me regret this, Danzo. And if I even notice a slight tinge of manipulation going on, I'll have your head, stated Hiruzen, who signed his umbu to follow him as he finally left the house of Danzo. Several minutes after Hiruzen left his house, four figures jumped in through the window that led to the outside world. Danzo-sama, the job, it's done. We can finally start Plan 1, stated the masked individual on the left. His voice was tainted with nothing. It was even hard to tell the gender by the voice, as no emotion could be found inside said being. Finally, Hiruzen, I will be Hokage. Danzo smiled, walked through one of the many hallways, and flipped a hidden lever that revealed a secret passage leading to whatever deep, dark, and scary dungeon he had in his basement point one day later. Naruto stirred in his mattress, which didn't look anything like a bed. It had many scratches on it, and even had a spring sticking out from it. If one were to look at the conditions of the bed, they would think it would have belonged to a person on the streets. Naruto began to stir more, before he slowly peeled his eyes open, the rays of the sun blinding Naruto's eyes for a moment. He rubbed the tired feeling out his eyes. He stretched out his legs and arms, getting a feeling for them. It was only when he laid in his bed for over a minute did he finally remember what happened yesterday. With a smile on his face, he hastily got up out of bed and ran into the bathroom to get cleansed from the dirt and blood that he shed yesterday. After a nice cold shower to wake himself up, he brushed his teeth and went to eat some ramen. When Naruto finally arrived in his kitchen and opened his cabinets, he was met with disappointment and sadness. Empty. Naruto cried comically. After a few minutes of crying over the fact he had nothing in his cabinets, he got up off the floor and went to his secret stash of money in his living room. There, behind a television stand, were stacks and stacks of Rio. I am saying Rio is the same currency as American money because it's just too much of a hassle to do the conversion. I'm also too lazy to do it. So yeah, this will also change many of the bounty's worth, but not by too much. Naruto grabbed his stash and put it in his frog wallet he got recently for his birthday. He ran out of his house hastily, almost as fast as he did when he got out of bed. When he reached the market district, he went straight for the shop he usually bought food from. He read in a book from the library that some foods weren't healthy for you, like ramen, the food he adores, but for the cost of getting stronger, Naruto would endure. He bought many foods, ranging from fruits, nasty vegetables, grains, non-expired milk, and new various meats. If he hadn't saved up the old man Hokage's funds, he wouldn't have had half of the money that he had now. He paid for all the expenses and ran out of the grocery store. Luckily, the store owner there didn't make him pay extra for the food he bought, unlike many other food store owners, who, in his opinion, had inferior foods compared to the one he bought at. With that being said, he eventually reached his house in record time too. He opened the door with the spare key he had under the door mattress that lay atop the doorstep. Naruto fumbled through the bundles of keys he had attached to the charm and, eventually, found the right key to open the door. He opened the door with the key and quickly and carefully ran into the house. He loaded the cabinets with the food he found at the grocery store. Now it was time to eat. He quickly got the ingredients to make bacon and eggs. He got the eggs, bacon, and milk out from the fridge and started cooking both the bacon and eggs atop the stove. He got himself a glass of milk while he was standing up too. When the eggs and bacon were finally cooked, he scarfed it all down and ran out of his kitchen and to his front door again. It felt like déjà vu, except he didn't have the same goal as last time. He hastily opened the door and locked it behind him. He peered around him, looking for anyone watching him. When he noticed everything was clear, he shoved the bundle of keys under the door mattress. He ran to the nearest forest, where he remembered the clear path towards Danzo's house. If Naruto was correct, the time was around 7:35, so he was only a little late. At long last, he made it to Danzo's house. He walked up to the door and quickly knocked on it. He didn't have to wait for long, as the door opened almost immediately after knocking on the door. "There you are, Naruto. Are you ready for your training?" Danzo asked seriously, which made Naruto inclined to nod his head, in an attempt to be serious too. Danzo signaled Naruto to follow him inside his house. They reached the kitchen, and there was a door leading to what seemed to Naruto a backyard. What Naruto didn't expect was 3 people there waiting on the training field. Old man Hokage Inu/in, or dog if you would rather me say dog instead of Inu, or rather English instead of Japanese, just say something. And a mysterious man with a headband covering most of his forehead with weird, white eyes that made him look almost blind. Naruto had a question written all over his face. "I forgot to tell you, in order for me to teach you, I needed the Hokage's approval. The Hokage will eventually leave the training ground to attend his duties as Hokage, but Inu and Hizashi-san here will watch our training sessions. And, in addition, aid you with parts of the training," Danzo finished saying, which made Naruto giddy inside. He was going to become the strongest shinobi ever and become Hokage in no time. He could barely wait. "Okay, so I'll get started on the exercises. I'll talk to you in 3 hours or so," stated and asked Naruto at the same time, which got Danzo to nod, who quickly joined up with the other 3. Naruto quickly got down to the 100 sit-ups. "Are you sure about this?" asked Hiruzen in an unsure tone. An audible count was heard from the other side of the training ground. "I am plenty sure, Hiruzen," He needs to be trained seriously, or he'll never learn. I can already tell that the instructors will either refuse to teach him or straight up sabotage his learning. Started Danzo matter-of-factly. 18, 19, 20. Naruto stated out loud after completing 20 sit-ups. Danzo continued. Plus, you've seen his chakra capacity. It's already larger than Hisashi-san here. This was rewarded with a gasp as Hisashi activated his dojutsu, eye ability, and scanned Naruto's chakra. You're right. It is already mid-jonin level at the age of 5. This amazed the other two listeners. While this was happening, Naruto was interrupted from his sit-ups when he felt a weird presence open up to his senses. He looked over to his right, which caught the attention of the pair of four. Why can I feel that blind guy? Naruto asked and yelled out. This confused the pair of four when they remember Naruto didn't know anything about dojutsu. Nothing. Keep up with your training, yelled out Hiruzen, which made Naruto get back to his training. An audible 40 was yelled out from the yellow-haired boy. Maybe a sensing ability? Inu asked out loud, which made the other three turn to him. Maybe, said Hiruzen, which inclined Danzo to continue talking. Another reason why we have to train him? Hiruzen, he has so much potential, and having him waste it will just be detrimental to his growth. Finished Danzo, which got Inu and Hisashi to agree with Danzo, which was in of itself rare. 50, 51 dash. Hiruzen closed his eyes and also shook his head. He wished Naruto had a normal childhood and had friends. He wished people like Naruto lived in a world of peace and didn't have to go through such hardships at a young age, kind of like young Itachi, who was forced at a young age to grow up, whilst kids were still playing on swing sets. Time skip, 3 hours. 6-9. After Naruto was finished with his exercises, you could see him only slightly winded, even after running a 10-kilometer dash, which greatly surprised all four individuals. Hiruzen looked at his watch while puffing his pipe. Well, it seems it is time for me to get to the office. It is up to you three to help him. I will take my leave now. Goodbye, Naruto. Hiruzen finished before disappearing, the only things connected to his presence originally being there were the leaves falling from the sky. Naruto, Hisashi will help you with this part. With your chakra capacity, we will be going backwards. We will be doing the exercises that cost more chakra first, and then eventually going to the ones that cost less. So, first up is tree climbing. This exercise is simple in explanation, but a lot harder when put it to use for the first time. In order to stick to the tree or vertical surface, you want to direct a constant stream of chakra to your feet. Too much chakra directed to your feet will make you explode off the branch. Not enough, and you will slip off the bark of the tree, right? Explained Danzo as simply as he could. Naruto nodded. Although Danzo could tell Naruto still had a question. What's wrong, Naruto? I can tell you have something on your mind, Danzo exclaimed. Well, I actually have multiple questions. First off, how is the blind man going to help me? How comes I could sense him earlier, like I knew he was there, but only when his face changed, like when those things were bulging from his face? Naruto asked multiple questions, which Danzo was planning on answering all of them. However, before he could, Hisashi beat him to it. Young Naruto, I am not blind. My eyes just have a special dojutsu called the Byakugan, which allows me to perceive around me in an almost perfect 360 degrees. These eyes also allow me to see through objects, such as walls and even the body. This allows me to see your chakra network. And the things that are bulging on my face are called chakra veins, which everyone has. It's just when I activate my dojutsu, so much chakra is being pumped into my veins to my eyes, they bulge out. I don't know if that's actually true, but I'm going to go with it. Naruto bobbed his head up and down, understanding what Hisashi was saying. He had read about dojutsu, but didn't know them to that extent. Okay, so you should be able to tell if I pump too much chakra or too little chakra into my feet to be able to stick to the tree or any vertical surface. Hisashi smiled and nodded at Naruto's explanation. Exactly that. Someone is a fast learner. I see. Hisashi praised Naruto, which made Naruto go red in the face because of the flattery. Well, get to work, try and supply enough chakra to the feet. I'll tell you if it is too much or too little with these eyes, Hizashi said while pointing at his eyes to add to the explanation. Naruto nodded, before supplying chakra to his feet, which was a lot harder than Naruto thought it would be, because he had no experience with chakra prior to today. Naruto could feel his chakra bubbling inside of him. No, he could feel two sources of chakra bubbling in him. One was calm, and the other was bubbly and hot. He felt if he mentally touched it, it would burn him. Naruto mentally reached for the calm one and circulated it into his mini tenketsu until he finally reached his feet. He supplied it regularly and changed the amounts of chakra according to Hizashi's commands. Okay, that's enough. Now, steadily walk up the tree. When you feel you're slipping from the tree, jump off of it. Here is a kunai to mark your progress. Hizashi handed him a kunai. Naruto gripped the kunai, reverse style, and walked over to the tree. He steadily placed one of his feet on the tree and lifted the other. He felt his control slip, but he claimed himself and placed the other foot on the vertical surface of the tree. Naruto smiled and continued to walk up the tree. When he took 3 more steps, he felt his control slip and he fell on the ground. He could hear some laughing from behind him and saw Hizashi holding his mouth, almost like he was holding in a laugh. This only angered Naruto, though. Hey, it's not that easy. I would love to see you do this on your first try. Naruto yelled back in retaliation to Hizashi laughing, which only made Hizashi stop holding it in and laugh out loud. This made Naruto's blood boil inside, and he hastily walked over to the tree again and continued to train in silence. It was an hour later when Naruto had almost completed the exercise that Danzo had come back from inside the house with 4 bento boxes, one for each person in the training ground. Everyone sat down at the same bench and began eating their own respective bento box. It was filled with meat and vegetables to help restore energy. Although Naruto still had a lot of energy, a lot of it coming from the bijou inside of him, and some of it coming from his Uzumaki genes. So, Naruto, for ninjutsu, we're going to learn the basics, and then you're going to learn real ninjutsu, like affinities and actual high-rank jutsus. So, first you'll learn the Academy 3, the Henge, transformation, Korimi Jutsu, replacement, and the Bunshin no Jutsu, doppelganger jutsu. These are called the Academy 3 because in order to become a genin, you have to become proficient in all 3 jutsus. Of course, I'll also teach you ninjutsu theory, the many different hand seals, and the parent of the Korimi Jutsu, the Shunshin no Jutsu, the body flicker technique, which allows you to teleport to either small or large distances in a flash. If trained enough, you'll be able to do the Shunshin technique in quick successions, which will be next to teleporting, but that'll take time, and you'll probably have to do it on your own if you want to have enough time to learn your affinities, whatever they or it might be. Danzo thoroughly explained, though. He paused a couple of times to swallow the food he was eating. Throughout the explanation, Naruto was scarfing down his food because he wanted to get started quickly. Now, before you go running off to start the ninjutsu part, I want to tell you something Danzo started, which made Naruto pay more attention to Danzo. Inu, or dog, will be teaching you the ninjutsu portion as he's the most versatile ninjutsu user here. Danzo finished signaling to Kakashi, or Inu. Naruto nodded before running towards the field to get started. So what are we waiting for? I am ready, yelled Naruto in excitement, which made Hizashi smile at Naruto's enthusiasm. Slow down there, Naruto. You want the food to digest first before you go running around and using chakra. You're still not at full chakra capacity yet. Plus, Kakashi didn't even finish his food dash, Hizashi said, pointing towards Kakashi's bento box. What he wasn't expecting was it to be empty and all of it gone. He sweat dropped at that. Kakashi was not good at being his example. Fine, Hizashi-sensei, Naruto exclaimed sadly, flopping on the ground, all mopey. After 30 minutes of waiting, Kakashi finally got up and went over to a sleeping Naruto next to a tree. Kakashi sighed. Wake up, Naruto. It's time to learn some ninjutsu, said Kakashi, clasping his hands together to wake Naruto up. Naruto jumped up in surprise, not expecting something to wake him up so loudly. Hey, I'm sleeping. You could have just shook me, yelled Naruto, accusing Inu of yelling and clasping his hands on purpose. Anyways, I will be teaching you the 12 basic hand seals: rat, ox, dog, tiger, boar, monkey, dragon, bird, hare, horse, snake, and ram. These 12 hand seals are the basic 12, and you'll learn to be able to use each and every single one of them in one of your techniques. In the technique you'll be learning today, you'll only learn 3 of them, but know that tomorrow you will learn to form all 12 of them perfectly and in a row. The first jutsu you'll be learning is the Henge no Jutsu, the transformation technique, which allows you to disguise into anything you want. Before I tell you the hand seals, know this: the transformation jutsu is like an illusion, so it's not solid. Unless you have a bloodline or something, you can't turn into a bird and fly. You can turn into animals, inanimate objects, plants, or another person. Inanimate objects being the toughest to disguise yourself as. Now that I have told you this, the hand seals are dog, boar, ram. Kakashi finished while also making the necessary hand seals in order to complete said technique. Doing so, he successfully turned into Danzo, but this Danzo was different. He had a dress on and makeup. He had bright pink high heels and nice perky eyelashes. His hair had also changed too, turning into a blonde woman. Kakashi was rewarded with a blooming laugh from Naruto and a chuckle from Hizashi. The only one who wasn't laughing was Danzo. In fact, he looked angry. Very angry. "Stop doing shenanigans. We don't have all day," Danzo said seriously, not finding it as funny as we did. His words made Kakashi stop with his bunshin and actually turn into Danzo, seriously this time. Now, you want to start with people you've seen before and people you will be talking to for a while, so you can get a good picture of them. So, you'll be turning into Danzo, as he's someone you can get a good picture of, and he's someone you'll be talking to for a while, Kakashi finished explaining, which inclined Naruto to try and transform into Danzo. Naruto formed the necessary hand seals for the bunshin. Dog, boar, ram. Naruto went up in a puff of smoke. Came out of the smoke, but he had no arms and his skin looked a lot pale. Very good first try, although he's a little pale and he has no arms. A lot better than my first try. I tried to transform into my dad, and I looked like a ghost, Hizashi said jokingly, which made Naruto giggle. Naruto formed the hand seals again, but this time he looked fine, nothing pale, but he had no hands and feet. It's okay. Just keep trying and you'll get a hang of it. Just make sure you don't use too much chakra, or you'll exhaust yourself and you won't be able to train, lectured Kakashi, who was sitting down, reading a certain perverted book. Naruto nodded at the advice and went at it again a couple of more times till he got it almost perfect. Well, would you look at the time? It is already 2 p.m. Yeah, I guess it's time to train taijutsu, said Kakashi, moving towards Naruto, who was talking to Hizashi, asking how he could improve on the technique. Naruto, it is time to train taijutsu. Now here I just want you to run at me and try to hit me. I doubt you'll be able to hit me, as I'm a part of Umbu. So the point of this exercise is to assess your strengths, stated Kakashi, who waved Naruto over to him, inclining Naruto to attack him. Naruto bobbed his head up and down and quickly ran over to Kakashi, who was surprised at the speed Naruto was running at. Now the surprise was over. He dodged the straight punch that was heading for his head. He dodged towards the left, so he was open for a roundhouse kick. Kakashi jumped away from the roundhouse kick. Naruto ran after Kakashi again, throwing another punch, which was deflected. Naruto threw a feint, which Kakashi went for, when Naruto actually went for a jab to Kakashi's ribs. The jab was apprehended quickly, but Kakashi was very proud and surprised that Naruto was fast without any prior training. Nice speed, although it's not enough to hit me. That's okay, because I'm just getting started. Naruto started increasing his already crazy speed and running off towards Kakashi. Naruto spun on his foot and threw a kick, which was thrown away. Naruto was flung from his position, but caught himself by spinning on his hand and catching his feet. You utilize your speed to overwhelm your opponent. I think I have the perfect style for you, stated Kakashi, who praised Naruto. Naruto only smiled and scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. Well, I tried Sensei. Naruto walked over to Kakashi. The style is called the hummingbird, which utilizes speed to overwhelm your opponents. This style relies on ninjutsu to increase their speed with techniques such as shunshin and their natural inherent speed to get ahead of their opponents. Their speed allows them to use many fast-paced taijutsu other styles could not. However, they do not have to rely on taijutsu because of their speed, stated Kakashi matter-of-factly. Kakashi continued. This taijutsu style was also used by the fourth Hokage, Fire Shadow, who used it in battle to overwhelm his own opponents. Since he is dead, I don't think he'll mind if you utilize. Hell, I think he would even want to pass it on to someone like you, said Kakashi. Naruto was confused though. What do you mean by someone like you, sensei? Hizashi almost spit out the water he was drinking when he heard the question. Before anyone could say anything, Danzo interrupted the momentary silence. You mean someone like you who has so much potential? Kakashi breathed out a sigh of relief. He almost had slipped there and said something that was an S-rank secret. Okay, I can't wait to master this taijutsu, Naruto said excitedly. Yeah, but remember how I said it utilizes ninjutsu. You'll need to learn the shunshin no jutsu proficiently before you can master this technique, Kakashi stated, which made Naruto pout. Kakashi smiled under his mask. Don't worry though, it shouldn't take long. You're pretty good. I would even say you're a prodigy. Naruto beamed at Kakashi's praise. It wasn't like he got called a prodigy every day, and Naruto was never given praise such as that. I'll make sure I'll master all of it and become Hokage. Naruto blurred out loud, which made Naruto blush from how loud he had said it. Danzo spoke up before anyone else could. We need to also teach you how to keep your emotions under control. If people can read you, you've already lost the battle. Kakashi added in. But remember that emotions are also key. It is what makes us human. So you want to keep said emotions under control. But remember that emotions are okay to express when around people who you trust, Kakashi finished. This got Naruto thinking. It was okay to have emotions. You just need to keep them under control when facing an enemy. Okay, I think I understand now. Okay, now that you understand that, you also need to understand that there are 4 levels of the hummingbird style. Beginner, intermediate, professional, and master. Kakashi explained thoroughly. You can learn beginner without shunshin, but you need to have a good level of speed, which you have, but you have to become even faster, so I'll buy you weights tomorrow to improve your speed and strength. Naruto bobbed his head at Kakashi's statement, signifying that he understood. Well, it seems I have talked like a storm, and I have already wasted all your time for your taijutsu practice. Next, we'll be learning kenjutsu or bukijutsu. We'll rotate between weapons. Today we'll talk about what weapon you'll be wanting to learn how to use, i.e. swords, bow staff, etc. Danzo started before making a hand seal, and a bunch of weapons popped out of a scroll that lay on the ground. Weapons like staffs, daggers, swords, katanas, and more all lie here on the training ground floor. You just pick what you feel is more compatible with you. Although, I advise picking at least 2 weapons. Naruto looked at all the choices. There were so many. Naruto stood there in awe. However, there were 2 that stood out to Naruto, a short-looking sword and a staff. Naruto picked them both up consecutively. Danzo hummed, I see, an odachi and a staff. An odachi is best for close quarters, but you can fool your opponent by making them think you have limited range before you switch to your staff, Danzo stated confidently. What a smart choice, Danzo thought to himself. Hiruzen can help you with the staff, as he specializes in its use, but I can personally help you with the odachi, as I use one myself. I know in the anime, he uses a kunai, but for the plot, I'm going to say he uses an odachi. Now, I want you to come at me with the intent to kill with the sword. If you don't, I won't know what kind of kenjutsu would fit best for you. I am ready whenever you are. Naruto paused at Danzo's words, letting them set it before breathing a sigh through his nose. Then a tint of red shone through his eyes as he ran at Danzo, the aim to at least scratch him with his sword. Once again, Danzo was proud of his student's speed, as it was impressive. Danzo watched as Naruto went to sweep his legs. He jumped up into the air, something that Naruto clearly wanted. Naruto went to stab him in the stomach. Danzo, clearly not wanting to be taken advantage of, blocks the sword with the flat side of his wooden sword. Danzo retaliated with a slice of his own, which hit Naruto on the back of the head. Naruto seethed in pain, but kept on going. He went for another route, and went to slice Danzo, but Danzo blocked it with his wooden sword again and backhanded Naruto to the ground. Naruto flew to the floor and smacked the floor hard. A grunt could be heard escaping from his mouth. Not bad for a beginner, but I need better, Danzo criticized, which earned him a growl from the one he was criticizing. Easy, Danzo. He is only 5. No need to be so mean, Hisashi stated, running over to Naruto's side. Don't baby him, Hisashi-san. He won't become stronger if he is babied, Danzo said confidently, looking at Naruto with an indifferent look. I understand that, but he is just 5 dash. No, I don't want to be babied. I want to be trained seriously. If you baby me, I won't be able to learn. Naruto shouted out from the ground. He had a scowl taped to his face. I need to improve fast. I almost died last night, and I don't want that happening ever again. If I don't improve, then who will? No one will protect me, so I'll have to learn to protect myself. How will I protect my loved ones if I can't even protect myself? Naruto asked rhetorically, which just left everyone silent, contemplating over Naruto's words. Naruto, that is not the point. You won't become God in a day. No need in rushing it and accidentally killing yourself from exhaustion dash. Hisashi was once again interrupted from the one on the floor. I don't care. I need to become strong. I don't care if I'm exhausted. I'll just train even harder the next day. This made Danzo smile for a split second, exactly what he was aiming for. Can you prove to me that you will do anything to become stronger? Danzo asked, which made everyone's attention flip from Naruto to Danzo. Can you prove to me that you are worth the time and effort? Danzo asked again. I will, even if it takes me 100 years. Naruto yelled out, which made everyone speechless. So much compassion and confidence was laced in Naruto's words that they believed it without even seeing it. Well, then come to me with the intent to kill, or you won't even lay a finger on me. Danzo yelled at Naruto. Naruto steadily got up from the ground, the wound from earlier still stinging pretty badly. Naruto raised his odachi, pointing at Danzo. I will hit you, even if it's the last thing I do dash. 6'9". And he was like, I'm going to kill you, Danzo. I really believed it too, said a familiar voice. There, sitting at a random ramen stand were 3 figures, Inu, Naruto, and Danzo, although the latter was more of standing, while Kakashi and Naruto ate their respective meals. Yeah, I swore I hit you, Sensei Danzo, exclaimed the youngest at the stand. You wish, said Danzo, who looked perfectly fine. The day you hit me is the day Kakashi will let you see his face, Danzo said, which made Kakashi look at him shockingly. Did you just joke? Asked Kakashi as if the world was going to end. Did you just stutter? Danzo shot back with a question of his own. Touché. Kakashi then shoved a noodle through his mask, which still amazed Naruto even after watching go through said mask several times. Naruto, this will be your last time eating here until a long time because this place isn't really healthy. Naruto waved his hand while sucking on a delectable noodle. Yeah, whatever you say, Sensei Danzo, Naruto said unbelievingly, which only made Danzo frown at Naruto's disobedience. Really have to fix that brat's attitude or he'll never be able to enter politics. So, what should I do next, Sensei Danzo? You said I should practice something called Fuinjutsu. Danzo nodded. Yes, Fuinjutsu are a type of jutsu that seals objects, living beings, chakra, along with a wide variety of other things within another object. Fuinjutsu can also be used to restrict movement or unseal objects either from within something or someone. The presence of seal is marked by the appearance of formations of technique, formulae, kanji, or other kinds of symbols, likewise with summoning techniques. That sounds cool. When can I start to learn how to make exploding tags and sealing scrolls so I don't have to carry around stuff in book bags? Naruto asked curiously. Danzo foregone his indifferent look and took up a much more thoughtful one. Well, first you want to improve on your calligraphy, which shouldn't be too hard. Then I want you to show me your improvement, and I'll teach you several seals I know. After that, you should probably give that time to improve on other subjects or spend your time studying for the academy. Danzo stated thoughtfully, to which Naruto appreciated the advice on the subject, although the calligraphy part did sound a little on the boring side. It would be worth it. After everyone was finally finished with their respective meals, Danzo paid for Naruto's portion of the meal, and Kakashi paid for his. I guess this is goodbye for today. See you tomorrow, Naruto, Kakashi said before body flickering away from the area, leaves falling from where he was originally standing. I guess this is goodbye for me as well, Naruto. I will talk to you later. Come to me tomorrow at the same time, Danzo said before also body flickering away. Naruto smiled. I guess my life isn't a waste after all. An old man wrapped in bandages walked out of the house next to the field, which looked small in comparison to the huge training ground. Naruto, come to me. The old man yelled out to Naruto, who sported black-grayish saga pants, with armored plates surrounding his chest. Under the armored plates were skin-tight, black shirts, which showed his developing muscles. The boy ran over to the old man's position like he didn't just run over 5 laps around the field without breaking a sweat. Yeah, Sensei Danzo? What you doing? Naruto asked out of curiosity. Danzo knew that he didn't finish his laps yet, so he shouldn't be starting anything else. Today we will be doing something different. If you haven't noticed, Kakashi and Hizashi aren't here today because they're on a mission, so I decided that instead of doing a scheduled training session, we will be specializing some days to one thing. For instance, Mondays could be your workout with just taijutsu training, so you can get the most out of just one day. Tuesdays can be your workout/conditioning session with ninjutsu training, so on and so forth. Danzo explained thoroughly, whilst keeping an eye on Naruto's facial expressions to see if Naruto understood everything he had said. Okay, that makes sense. So what are we doing today? Naruto wondered if they were going to do something like Kenjutsu today. Today is different though. Today or rather, you will be doing a mission, Danzo stated, which made Naruto get all excited. Really? What mission are we going to do? Are we going to save a princess or fight a magical dragon? Naruto half questioned and screamed out. Danzo shook his head at Naruto's idiotic questions, which Naruto in return pouted Danzo. No, and dragons don't exist. You'll be doing a D-rank mission, which is on the lines of useless work that any civilian could do with enough work ethic, Danzo said dryly, which made Naruto fall over comically. How uncool, Naruto thought. The mission he was going to get would be boring. Is there any way I could get something bigger and not chores? Naruto questioned Danzo. No, or at least not at this time. You'll have to learn to control your feelings and become a lot more patient before you even think of taking a higher-ranked mission, Danzo lectured Naruto. Danzo didn't really see it fit that a shinobi couldn't control their emotions. If the enemy knew what made you twist and turn, you already lost. Okay, I'm assuming we're going to the Hokage Tower, Naruto asked knowingly, to which Danzo shook his head, signifying an approval. But before we do that, you'll have to wear this, Danzo said, handing over a mask that looked like the face of a fox and had a kanji in the corner of the mask saying fox. Naruto looked at the mask curiously. How come a fox? I mean, why not a lion or Before Naruto was able to complete his thought-turned sentence, he was stopped by Danzo's cane hitting the ground. That's not the point. You will wear it because you and I both know that the villagers don't like you, so you will be wearing this so they could at least give you a chance. Depending on your reputation that you build, will determine if you're liked after your heroic actions, Danzo explained apathetically. Naruto nodded, shutting his mouth so he wouldn't say anything else stupid. Naruto stood there silently, waiting for any other information to be given to him. When he wasn't told any more information, he turned around and started walking towards the house to leave. When Naruto almost made it to the doors of the house, he was abruptly stopped by Danzo. Naruto, before you leave, Just know that the Hokage has been informed on your little situation, so fear not, Danzo said before Naruto could leave the compound. Naruto looked back at Danzo and nodded before continuing with his path and putting on his fox mask. He opened the door and quickly entered the house. He went out through the front door and walked through the neat and thorough path towards the main parts of Konoha. 6-9. Naruto finally arrived at the Hokage Tower and took in view of the whole tower. There were 3 parts of the whole tower, one huge tower in the middle, and one each flanking its side. The building was mainly red, but it had some spots that were this yellowish-orange color. Its roof was a sand-like texture. Naruto really never paid attention to some details and was impressed. He was usually always in a hurry when going into the building. Naruto walked through the doors and noticed that the Hokage building was packed with different people. One had coal-like eyes and black spiky hair, with an Uchiha Signa covered on his back. Another was like a polar opposite with white hair and white eyes. Naruto recognized this person as someone a part of Hizashi's clan. Another had funny markings on her cheeks and brown-blackish spiky hair. She looked like the least feminine woman that Naruto has ever seen. Naruto, who noticed that he had been staring at the woman for quite some time now, started walking towards the mission office. Naruto walked into the mission assignment room. As he walked in, he immediately noticed the Hokage, who was staring right through his eye holes. Naruto nodded at the Hokage, who was inclined to nod back at him. Naruto continued on to look at the other people inside the room. A bunch of other old heads and a Chunin were flanking the Hokage's side. The old heads looked like they were going to die on the spot with how old they were. Naruto inwardly smiled at the little joke he made before he heard the Hokage speak up from in front of him. "What do you want, Fox?" the Hokage asked in a serious tone, which inclined Naruto to stand up with a straight posture and look the Hokage straight in the eyes. "I am here to take on a D-rank mission, Hokage-sama," Naruto said smoothly. He learned that he should say Old Man Hiruzen's name as Hokage-sama around other adults as it was respectful, and people of elder age demanded respect, even if they themselves didn't deserve it. "What would you like to take today? Maybe something like painting the fences or baby-sitting Mikasa's daughter?" Hiruzen questioned Naruto, which almost made Naruto sigh because of the boring list of missions. After a minute of searching through the boring list of missions, Naruto found one that seemed the least boring, which was nigh impossible because they were all boring, even this one. "I would like to go retrieve Tora, if that is okay with you, Hokage-sama," Naruto stated, while also bowing down in faux respect. He was still mad that Hiruzen didn't want to help him with the citizens. Thankfully, he didn't really need his help anymore with the new senseis he found. "That is okay with me, Fox-san. Report back when you have finished the mission," Hiruzen stated, which Naruto bowed one last time before taking his own leave. "Hiruzen, who is that? I have never heard of the Umbu member, Fox," the Umbu commander said curiously. He had never heard of the Umbu member before, and he was supposed to know every single Umbu member before they are instated. "That is because this Umbu member isn't truly official. He is someone I myself have recruited and will only report to me," Hiruzen said with a tone that said, "No more questions," which stopped the Umbu commander from making a rebuttal. 6-9. Naruto peered through the mask's slitted eye holes. He watched as his prey hid behind a trash can unknowingly. He stalked his prey. He waited until the cat walked out of her hiding spot, and then he would pounce on it. It was only after 15 minutes that the cat finally walked out of its hiding spot because of boredom. Naruto got ready to pounce. 3, 2, 1. Now, Naruto thought, as he jumped out of his hiding spot and attempted to land on the cat to capture it. What Naruto wasn't expecting was the cat to jump on his face and claw it, which left Naruto stunned for a couple of seconds, before he watched the cat run towards a forest that was blocked off a gate. Naruto ran after the kitten. While he was running, he noticed that the cat jumped through the gate. Naruto sighed before he started to climb up the fence. Naruto read on a sign the words, "Training Ground 44, but the rest were blocked off almost intentionally. Naruto finally jumped over the forest gate and saw just a glimpse of the bell of the cat running inwards towards the center of the forest. Naruto's eyes furrowed before he ran after the cat. As Naruto was running towards the runaway cat, he didn't notice that when he jumped up to capture the cat, a snake had jumped out from the foliage surrounding him, its mouth wide open with its tongue sticking out. Naruto's eyes widened to huge proportions. This wasn't what he expected. This mission was supposed to be a walk in the park. Naruto's eyes quickly went back to normal, before squinting in seriousness. Naruto was not one to run away from a challenge. After landing on the ground, he dodged the mouth of the snake before flinging a shuriken at the snake. It was time for the snake to be surprised, as the snake for sure thought it was going to catch its prey, which was going to be an easy catch for the snake. The shuriken flung at high speeds towards the snake, who was incapable of dodging away from the shuriken's path. The shuriken dug deep inside the snake, who was inclined to flinch at the shock of pain. That didn't stir the snake's determination to catch its prey, though, as it jumped at Naruto again. Naruto jumped from the snake's bite again. Now noticing the snake, it was full black and probably 4 feet wide and 9 feet tall, which was nothing like any snake Naruto has even seen. Naruto threw another shuriken at the snake, who was able to dodge the shuriken this time, which boosted the confidence of the snake and lowered the esteem of Naruto. Naruto turned his back against the snake and started running in a random direction with an intense frenzy. He periodically looked back at the snake, who was still following him. Naruto was brainstorming ideas on how to throw off the snake, which was easier said than done as the snake was not only huge, but snakes were known for their amazing sense of smell because they had poor eyesight and hearing. Naruto then remembered something that he had learned from yesterday and applied chakra to the soles of his feet before jumping on the trunk of a tree. Naruto had a little difficulty sticking to the tree, but it wasn't too major to make him slide off. Naruto had to think of a plan, and fast so he didn't die. He wanted to assess the snake before he tried to run in with his weapon, as he wasn't really trained in sword arts. Naruto inhaled through his nose before quickly exhaling the oxygen through his mouth. He had a plan, but he didn't know if it would work or not as he wasn't really trained in chakra yet. Naruto unsheathed his kodachi and applied chakra to it, which inclined him to use his utmost attention to applying the chakra. This was probably the toughest thing he had ever done in his 5 years of living. He swung at the branch close to him. What he didn't expect was that he applied too much chakra in his sword, and he chopped through the main bark of the tree, which sent him flying down with the branch that he purposely meant to cut. Time felt slowed down as he fell down, right on top of the snake from earlier, which had his mouth wide open. Naruto almost closed his eyes, as he felt that the pain would be near to nothing if he closed his eyes. However, an image of last night had played through his mind, and he couldn't bear to disappoint his new senseis. So, with the most determination that Naruto had ever mustered in his entire life, he grabbed the hilt of his kodachi. The fear of dying, of blackness, filled his entire being as he reached above his head with the sword. When he only reached a few meters in front of the 9-foot snake, he swung at it with all his might. Before the sword and the snake collided, a little sparkle could be seen shrouding around the sword. Milliseconds later, the sword and the snake collided, and Naruto collapsed due to chakra exhaustion. Naruto woke up to the sound of dripping water. Naruto took in his surroundings, and for one thing, he was surprised. Curious even. He was wondering how he got into a sewer, especially since there appears to be only one direction to go. Naruto sighed before picking himself up from the ground that was covered in water, yet after focusing, he realized that he wasn't wet, which was weird, since Naruto was applying chakra to keep himself up. Naruto shook his head as if to clear it. He started to walk in the only direction he could go, forward. After what seemed like 5 minutes, he arrived in an open area with a giant cage. "Hello, is someone there?" Naruto half questioned and yelled. He was rewarded with a loud growl from the cage. "Shut up. I am trying to sleep, peasant," a demonic voice responded to Naruto from the giant cage. If Naruto had to guess, that cage was probably 1.5 Hokage towers. The way the demonic voice just simply dismissed Naruto that easily annoyed Naruto. Hey, I'm talking to you. Don't sleep on me. Who are you? Naruto questioned the evil voice inside the cage. Came out of the shadows, and close to the bars of the cage was a giant fox who had to be at least as tall as the Hokage tower, probably even larger. Brat, watch how you speak to your elders. If I really wanted to, I could eat you, no? Crush you where you stand, yelled the giant fox, with 9 swaying tails behind the fox. Naruto's eyes widened to huge proportions when he noticed the creature he was talking to. If he wasn't mistaken, that was the Kyuubi, the 9-tails fox. Wait, did I die or something? Naruto questioned the giant fox, who smirked an evil smirk at the fear he sensed in its host. Yes, and I have come to torture you for all eternity, the evil fox said as he laughed maniacally. Naruto started to tremble, his hair casting a shadow on his face. A second laugh came from Naruto, which surprised the Kyuubi. Well, that doesn't matter. I'll just beat you up and revive myself from the dead then, Naruto said in a determined voice. It was the Kyuubi's turn to be surprised by his young host's words. The demon fox smiled. He loved a good challenge. Well, come at me with the intent to kill, or you won't even touch me. The Kyuubi started with an almost playful-looking smile. Naruto started running to the cage, but before he could reach the inner cage, a yellow flash appeared out of nowhere, which grabbed Naruto from running inside the cage and teleported to the outer area. The yellow flash is revealed to be the 4th Hokage, sporting his Hokage robes. Naruto was, yet again, surprised for the umpteenth time today. Hokage-sama, what are you doing here? Naruto threw out multiple questions at the young Hokage, who just chuckled at the young-haired boy. Naruto, I am here because I supplied chakra through your seal when you were just born. Although, I expected you to be a lot older before I finally met you, and even older when you finally met the Kyuubi, Minato explained, which made Naruto even have more questions. Minato saw the confusion written on Naruto's face. No, you are not dead. You are just unconscious in your mindscape. Naruto's face turned into an O shape, which made Minato chuckle. Minato continued, any more questions? Naruto's brain started processing everything. He understood everything. Why he had barely any friends. Why the third liked him so much. Why he was hated all around the village. Naruto only had one question. Why me? Why did you choose me instead of everyone else in the village? Naruto managed to speak out, a tear dropping from his left eye because of the amount of the emotional torment he has been throughout his 5 years of living. Usually kids his age are worried about what swing set they would play on, or if their best friend were still, well, their best friend. Him, on the other hand, was worrying if he would live the next day, if someone would try to assassinate him again. Minato bit his lip before saying, because I am your father. Before Minato could say anything else, he was bombarded with blows from Naruto. Minato was surprised because it was the beginning stage of his style. You, it is all your fault. Naruto yelled as he threw another punch at Minato's abdomen. You condemned me to the beatings. You left me to have no friends, no parents. Naruto screamed at Minato, another punch being sent, although this one straight off to his head, hitting Minato directly in the right cheek. Minato was surprised because he was promised that Naruto would be left with an amazing childhood, as a savior of Konoha for carrying the Kyuubi no Kitsune. As Naruto was bombarding his dad with hits, the Kyuubi was watching the affair with a disapproving nod. Humans, the Kyuubi thought. Naruto, what are you talking about? I was promised that you were going to have an amazing childhood, that you were going to be treated as a savior, Minato said, dodging another punch from Naruto. Before Naruto could throw another punch, Minato quickly jumped up from off the ground. Now looking at Naruto, Minato saw that Naruto's looks were almost uncanny to him. The yellow hair, the blue eyes. The only thing different about his features were his facial features. They were similar to Kushinas. The round face, the shape of the eyes. Can you please tell me what you're talking about? I was told by Hiruzen that you are going to be treated as a hero, someone who helped save the village by holding the QB in his stomach. Minato added on to his original statement. Naruto nodded and told Minato everything that has happened, to the getting kicked out of the orphanage, to him getting betrayed by Hiruzen, to him getting saved by Danzo. Minato nodded. Okay, although I don't like that you're being trained by Danzo, as he is very manipulative, I'm glad that at least someone is taking care of you in your training while I am dead. Minato added, when Minato was Hokage, Danzo was actually respectful and was not doing anything behind his back. However, when Hiruzen was Hokage, he could see that Danzo was very manipulative. Really? You are saying Sensei Danzo is manipulative? Are you sure we are talking about the same person? He has done nothing but help me since I first met him, Naruto stated obliviously. Minato shook his head. Well, he was very manipulative when Hiruzen was Hokage. When I was Hokage, it almost seemed like he respected me, so he didn't do anything to get on my bad terms. Probably because I reminded him too much of his old sensei, Tobirama. Not to mention the fact that I perfected the same technique his master created, Minato explained to Naruto thoroughly. Naruto nodded and paid attention to every word that Minato said. It was nice knowing that your father wasn't a mean person and that he actually did love you. Okay, I have one more question though, Naruto stated before continuing. How was Mom? What did she look like? Was she pretty? Was she nice? Naruto asked in a sincere voice, which made Minato smile. She was probably the kindest woman I had ever met. She had beautiful, crimson, red hair, an ocean-like eyes, Minato said, almost in a dreamlike state. Naruto raised an eyebrow at Minato before kicking him in the shin to regain his attention. Minato laughed awkwardly and scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. Naruto laughed at that, so he wasn't the only person who did that when he was embarrassed. Naruto was caught by surprise when he saw that Minato was fading. Well, it seems like my time is up, son. My chakra is running out. This seems like goodbye for now. Promise me something, though, Minato said, which made Naruto on the verge of tears. What is it? Naruto said, understanding that he couldn't do anything in this situation to make Minato stay. Make sure you find the woman just for you, like I had with Kushina, Minato said. It is what Kushina would want for you. And make sure you make some friends, as Kushina would also want that for you. And try and be nice to Kyubi over here, although he could be a little douche. Hey, I heard that, peasant. The Kyubi screamed at the brat's disrespect. Remember who sealed you, Minato said in a witty comeback, which left the Kyubi speechless for a while. Minato continued. He is basically the only one who can understand you at a basic level, because he almost faced torment from the world for over 1,000 years. Another regret that me and Kushina faced, we weren't necessarily kind to the Bijus, Minato said, regretfully. And one last thing, this one is a personal request, Minato said before continuing after Naruto nodded. Please become stronger than I ever was, so nothing like this will ever happen again. So nobody has to go through what you went through or are currently going through. Naruto nodded at that before saying his goodbyes to his father. A tear left both the male's eyes before Minato's signature left the area completely, no sign of him ever being there in the first place. I really hate human emotions. Well, that's enough for me today. Goodbye. Another thing, try not to die next time. You are lucky I'm able to give you my chakra at any time I so please. If not, you would have died multiple times over again, the Kyubi said before Naruto blacked out again, this time returning to the conscious realm. 6-9. Naruto woke up from a beeping sound. This time when he looked around at his surroundings, it wasn't a sewer, but a hospital room, which Naruto was willing to argue was worse, as he hated hospitals. You finally are awake. A familiar voice spoke up, Naruto realizing their presence. Sensei Danzo, Naruto asked, which he was rewarded with a nod when Danzo came into his peripheral view. Did I do it? Naruto asked, which he received a bob of the head. Yes, You did receive an injury that would have killed any normal person. If it weren't for your abnormal healing factor, you would have died a gruesome death, Danzo said sarcastically, which made Naruto look at Danzo dryly. No, I mean, did I kill the snake? Naruto asked again. Yes, you did kill the snake. And I think we may have found out one of your affinities when you killed the snake, Danzo stated matter-of-factly. Naruto had a question, though. Affinities? Like I can shoot out fire or cut something with wind? Naruto asked curiously, which Naruto confirmed his suspicions. Yes, although I don't know about those two, we do know that you can electrocute a snake, and telling by the burns, I'm assuming your affinity to lightning is strong, Danzo said, his hand on his chin thoughtfully. So, when will I be learning my new affinity? Naruto asked, also placing his hand on his chin, mimicking Danzo. Not for a while, as we need you to get the basics down before you can learn the hard stuff, Danzo said, which left Naruto disappointed. But fear not, you progress fast in your training, so it shouldn't take you long, Danzo said, which made Naruto proud at the slight praise. Well, let's let you heal and sleep first before we throw you back into training. Then after a couple of more days of training, I'll send you back on a mission, which shouldn't be as difficult as the one you were just on, Danzo said, which Naruto nodded at. Naruto's eyes shone with determination, as he couldn't wait at the prospect of training and becoming stronger than before. Dad, just you wait, I'll be as strong as you in no time, Naruto thought as his eyes shut closed, blackness encasing over his whole frame once more, for the third time this day. Naruto stalked Kakashi as he encircled him several times. Naruto took a step back, thinking of ways to get out of the situation that he was in. Naruto looked to his right, where the Hokage, Danzo, and Might Guy were sitting on a bench, watching the scene as it unfolded. Turning his attention back to Kakashi, he could see just the slightest muscle twitch, which meant that he was going to reach for a kunai. Naruto, seeing this, went and grabbed a kunai too, throwing it at similar speeds to Kakashi. The only difference was the one Kakashi threw was encased in lightning chakra. Naruto, although in battle, was reminiscing about the time he accidentally shocked Kakashi after learning that he had a lightning affinity. He tried to release it without getting trained in it, and he accidentally shocked Kakashi, which in turn Kakashi was severely mad at him and continued to shock him accidentally. Paying attention to the kunai's meat, he watched as Kakashi's kunai pierced through his, heading towards him. Naruto moved his head to the side by just a small margin, easily letting it pass by him. Now that Naruto was paying more attention to his surroundings, he noticed that Kakashi wasn't in his original position. This made Naruto go on high alert. Naruto's body flickered out of the way, avoiding two hands outstretched from the ground, trying to get a hold of his ankles. Kakashi, you have done that way too many times for me to get caught in one of those, Naruto added, especially after the last time, Naruto mumbled. It was worth a try, a muffled voice said, coming from under the ground. Naruto watched as a white-haired man jumped up from under the ground, wiping down the dirt off his clothes that he had gathered when he was underground. You have a good reaction time. How about we try stage 1? Taijutsu, Kakashi said, before running over to Naruto at high speeds that Naruto was barely able to perceive. On the other side of the training ground, Hiruzen asked Danzo, why is Kakashi trying so hard? The reason why Kakashi is trying so hard is because any less effort and Naruto himself would get angry and bored. Naruto hates it when people don't try against him, especially people that are stronger than him. He thinks, in his head, that if you don't use 100% of your effort, you and your opponent will never become stronger. In this case, Naruto wants to become stronger immediately, Danzo explained, to which he was rewarded with a nod from the Hokage. So, he is a hard worker dash. Before Hiruzen was able to finish his thought-turned sentence, he was interrupted by Danzo. And a prodigy. No one I have ever taught in my entire life could learn as fast as Naruto could. Hell, I would even say that he is stronger than Orochimaru at his age. Maybe even when he was a genin and you were teaching him. If I would have to estimate his strengths, I would say everything is around low chunin, mid chunin except for his chakra reserves and jinjutsu. If I had to estimate his reserves, I would have to say he is around Hyambu, low Kaga level reserves. His jinjutsu, on the other hand, is weak except for his ability to break through them. Because of his abundant amount of reserves, it would be hard to take him under your control with just C-rank jinjutsu. Anything lower than C rank, and you won't be able to get a hold of him, Danzo explained, which surprised Hiruzen. Hiruzen stopped spending much time with Naruto because of his political status as Hokage, and Naruto was too busy training. He would be surprised if Naruto had any friends with how long he was at the training grounds. That's why Hiruzen said that Naruto would go to the academy. He knew that under Danzo's teachings, he wouldn't have many friends. Hiruzen was surprised that Naruto had still had a lot of his emotions, although he noticed that during combat he was this unreadable enigma. But not during combat, he was the opposite, a happy-go-lucky child, as if he was as sane as the rest of us. Hiruzen knew better, though. It was mostly all a facade. Just like your father, Hiruzen thought, a smile morphing his face at the thought of Minato. Minato was a good spirit, nice and kind to his comrades, but deadly and cruel to his enemies. That was probably why Danzo was fine with Minato, not even doing anything fishy to Minato when he was Hokage, probably because Danzo actually respected Minato as a strong unit. He was guessing it was because Minato was strong and reminded Danzo of his former teacher, Tobirama Senju. Now paying attention back to the fight, he saw that Naruto was actually going toe-to-toe with Kakashi, although the latter wasn't necessarily trying as hard as Naruto, because Hiruzen saw that Kakashi still hadn't showed his Sharingan yet, which was understandable because Naruto was still just 7 years old, but that was no disrespect to Naruto's strength. Hiruzen was surprised again when he watched Naruto disappear in a pattern of Shunshin, actually managing to hit Kakashi because of the surprise of speed. With Naruto's abundant amount of stamina and chakra, he could probably outrun even the likes of Kakashi, but that was not taking into account Kakashi's strength, which was far above your average jonin. Nice, it's Naruto. I didn't think you'd actually manage to make me do something like this, Kakashi said, before reaching for his headband. Naruto, seeing what Kakashi was going to do, body flickered over to Kakashi's spot in order to stop Kakashi from removing the headband. Naruto was too late, though, as Kakashi managed to remove the headband that was covering his left eye. What was revealed was a fully developed 3-Tomo Sharingan. The eye spun lazily, easily perceiving everything around him. The birds flying over his head, the leaves falling, slowly, very slowly due to his enhanced perception. Finally, I was able to make you pull out your Sharingan. I guess that means it's time for me to get rid of these old suckers, Naruto said, before making a hand seal and yelling the word Kai. A seal that read the kanji 3/10, read across his entire body, lit up, and quickly faded away. This surprised the Hokage, as he wasn't told that Naruto had gotten a resistance seal, specifically one that was the strongest and had the most effect on the user of the seal. It was a double-edged sword. It made your speed increase, but the levels of each stage of resistance was increasingly harder than the next, and was able to kill those that were weaker than it before them. This was a lot more interesting than before, especially since both were trying harder than before. Might Guy, who was awfully quiet, which was highly unlikely of him, sped to the middle of the field with a flag in hand. He put it in the middle and yelled "Hi," which made both participants speed off to the other. Danzo had a sly smirk on his face that Hiruzen could easily tell meant, "I told you so." Okay, just say it. I told you so. You were right. Naruto did have a lot of potential that would have definitely been ruined if it weren't properly spread. However, in my defense, I was only hoping that he could have at least something reminiscent of a childhood. Hiruzen defended himself, which Danzo shook his head at. Just pay attention to the battle. You might miss something, Danzo said, which inclined Hiruzen to turn his full attention towards the fight between Naruto and Kakashi. Both of them clashed, fist to fist. Naruto threw a kick, which was easily thrown back to Naruto. Seeing that his advancement was futile, he body flickered behind Kakashi, throwing a punch to his head. Kakashi, predicting this because of his eyes, ducked under the punch and sweep-kicked Naruto. Naruto jumped over the sweep kick and sent a haymaker towards Kakashi. Kakashi saw this coming and jumped back a couple of meters. Both noticed that the fight was going nowhere, so Kakashi was the first to change it up, forming specific hand seals for jutsu. Horse Tiger Ram, Monkey Boar Horse Tiger. Fire Release, Great Fireball Jutsu. Kakashi yelled out as he spewed out a giant fireball that took over a fifth of the entire field. Naruto, who had no jutsu to defend himself, could only do one thing, Shunshin. However, that was probably something that Kakashi expected and would then defeat him accordingly. Naruto knew he wasn't going to beat Kakashi, as Kakashi was more experienced and fought in a war himself. So he would have to do something that was so stupid, yet smart, that not even Kakashi would expect it. Naruto had just the thing. Forming just one hand seal, he swapped places with Kakashi, which surprised him, so he wasn't able to put up a water wall as fast as he was usually able to, so some parts of his body were slightly singed from the fireball. When the water met the fireball, a huge mist covered the field, which concealed the two from the peeling eyes of the bystanders. When the mist cleared, there stood a slightly scathed Kakashi with an unconscious Naruto on his back that looked almost completely fine if it weren't for the fact that he was unconscious. Don't worry, he is just unconscious, but damn if he isn't stupid. Were the first words that came out of Kakashi's mouth, which was covered with a mask. I still can't believe that he was stupid enough to swap bodies with me. That is just unheard of, Kakashi stated, which surprised my guy and made both Danzo and Hiruzen smile. I didn't know that was possible, my guy stated, which Hiruzen nodded, agreeing with his statement. Well, theoretically speaking, if you were to overcome someone's chakra with yours, like with a Jinjutsu, you should theoretically be able to swap bodies with someone else, Hiruzen said. To think of that on the fly is just nigh crazy and smart, Danzo said, which in turn made Hiruzen and Might Guy have to agree with his statement. I told you, Hiruzen, that Naruto is a prodigy and hard worker, Danzo stated. Hiruzen nodded while snapping his fingers. After he snapped his fingers, an Umbu came out of the tree that sat directly above them and went to heal little Naruto and Kakashi from any wounds they might have. He is definitely stronger than I thought he would be. I just have one question for you. Danzo, do you plan on teaching him Shadow Clone Jutsu? I mean, with his huge reserves, he should be able to make at least 50 without sweating. Hiruzen replied to Danzo, who just nodded his head, signifying a yes. Make sure you make him use it wisely. I don't want a dead Naruto, or at least not until he dies a respectful death. Plenty of years after mine, Hiruzen added. Would I be me if I weren't careful, Hiruzen? Danzo asked rhetorically. No, I guess not, Hiruzen said. Hiruzen, before you leave, I want to send him on a C-rank mission before he goes to the academy. I want to make sure he has his first kill, Danzo explained, which inclined Hiruzen to raise an eyebrow. At such a young age, are you sure he is ready? Hiruzen asked. He was born ready. His ancestors and parents promised us that, Danzo said, who walked over to Naruto's unconscious body, picked him up before leading his body to the house and laying on the couch to let him get some sleep. 6-9. One day later, Naruto walked into the assignment office inside of the Hokage building and greeted the Hokage and the academy instructor, Iruka. He had gotten to know Iruka because of the many missions he had taken, which was around 100 D ranks. So, Hokage-sama, what mission will I be taking today? Naruto asked. Hiruzen waved over a Chunin towards him, who was carrying a scroll in hand. Naruto watched as the Hokage opened up the scroll, nodded at it, and waved Naruto towards him. You will be taking something different today. You will be doing your first C-rank mission. This mission was recommended to me by Danzo, your sensei. Hiruzen started. This mission will be a bandit extermination mission. Hiruzen finished. Naruto's eyes widened. He didn't think he would be taking a C rank today, let alone a bandit extermination one. which guaranteed you would have to kill. Naruto thought he would be allowed to wait for his first kill, but it seems not. He would be thrown into it immediately. Yes, Hokage-sama, Naruto said, as he grabbed the scroll from the Hokage's hands, looked into it, and walked out of the assignment room. If one were to look at Naruto, they would think he was as calm as someone who was meditating, his thoughts portrayed otherwise. He knew that killing was going to be inevitable, but he thought that he would be given a little more time. Naruto sighed through his nose. He guessed now was better than never. At least this would give him more experience outside of battle. Although he knew that he could take on any normal bandit, it was better to over-prepare than under-prepared and die. Naruto looked back at the contents one last time, before putting on his mask and pocketing the scroll into another one. 6-9. 1 hour later, Naruto was facing the bandit camp. It was a lot bigger than he thought it would have been, but he was prepared for something relative to this size or bigger, as he had over-prepared, so he was fine. He would take an hour of reconnaissance to get a feel of their pattern. Naruto breathed through his nose and out of his mouth before he quickly sped to the bandit camp. 6-9. Onara Oshiri walked across the podium. He thought of his tragic past. He had a tough childhood, as his mother died, giving birth to his younger brother, and his father was an abusive alcoholic because of his mother's death. That was the reason why he became a bandit. It was a way to get rid of his pent-up anger inside that burnt like an undying fire. Him and his brother both became bandits at a young age, after accidentally killing their father in a freak accident. They later fled to a small no-name village that was taken over by a bandit group. They later joined them, him being 14 and his brother being 8. Now, 8 years later, they are both doing relatively good. Thankfully, they hadn't come across a shinobi in a long time, as they were a relatively large amount of people, and they were good at hiding, even though there were an abundant amount of people in their camp. An hour passed. He changed position periodically, but it was his time to take shifts by the outer part of the camp. Once he managed to make his position, he settled down, taking in the view of the moon. Onara liked the moon better than the sun. Even at a young age, he never knew why. As he was paying attention to the moon, he was too busy to realize the slight tint of steel heading for his neck. The last thing he would see before his death was the moon, crimson red, with a cat-like eye slit in it. 6-9. Naruto noticed a bandit not paying attention to his surroundings, so he capitalized on it. He slowly crept up to the bandit and flowed chakra to his hand, which made a Kodachi sword appear from thin air. When Naruto fully grasped the sword, he slit the throat of the bandit, crimson red blood spilling from the neck of the 20-something-year-old man. He watched with disgust as the man fell over lifelessly. Naruto, who didn't want to let go of the advantage, grabbed the body of the lifeless bandit and hid him behind a bush. Naruto did the same thing to the next few bandits, slashing their throats and hiding them in places that weren't too obvious. Naruto miscalculated a step and accidentally got caught, although he killed the bandit before he could call too much attention. Even then, the deal was done. Every single bandit on the premise came barreling in to kill Naruto. Naruto watched in slow motion as the bandits came to slaughter him. It was almost laughable how a 7-year-old could see people who were thrice his age in slow motion. It was almost laughable. Almost. Naruto didn't allow himself to be taken advantage of, and quickly killed the bandits who thought they could kill him because of the size and age difference. They were wrong. He sunk his Kodachi in every single one of the bandits, smoothly with no extra step, efficiently as always. He watched as every single person he stuck his Kodachi in fell lifelessly to the ground. What gave people the right to kill others was a thought that came up every time he killed another person with his Kodachi. He almost felt numb during all of this, like if he were stabbed, he wouldn't feel the jolt of pain from the wound. A bandit tried to sneak attack him, but he easily saw through it and body flickered behind the unknowingly dead bandit. He stuck his Kodachi through the back of his head, killing him in seconds. Is it the thought process that is kill or be killed? Is that what gives me the right to kill others? Because if I don't, they will kill me and others that are innocent. Naruto thought as he shoved his Kodachi in another victim that wasn't so innocent. Stop thinking over it so deep when it isn't that deep. We kill, oh well. Get over it and your emotions, or they will eat you from the inside, the QB said from inside his head. Understand that. But what is the difference between me and him? On my side, I am deemed a hero, but on their side, I am deemed an enemy, an evil person. Vice versa. So, what is the difference between me and them? Is it just morals? Is it stance? They have a life and a family too? What makes my stance right and theirs not? What makes my rule over theirs? Naruto asked from within his head, as he learned early on that if you talked to the QB out loud, people would look at you weirdly. Naruto was only met with silence from the QB. Naruto shook his head as he stabbed the last bandit with his Kodachi, this time shoving it through his heart, killing him instantly, saving him the pain. Well, at least I don't enjoy killing, as that would make me a sadist. I guess that is what makes me human, my emotions. Without them, I would just be an empty shell with no purpose. With no purpose, there is no point of living, Naruto said out loud. Has anyone ever told you that you are wise for your age? The QB asked, which just made Naruto chuckle, which would be weird if somebody saw him, as he was surrounded by many different bodies, lying lifelessly on the ground. Too many times, Naruto said. As he stalked over the many different bodies and the adrenaline ran out, he threw up. It was something that would be easy to get used to, but Naruto didn't know if he wanted to. Naruto wiped his mouth with his hand. Before walking away from the scene, disgust plastered across his face at what he just did and the number of people he did it to. He would never forget this, especially the eyes of the first victim he killed. That would forever be plastered on his mind. If Naruto were to look back at the scene of scattered bodies, he would have seen a masked man with one eye whole, with a Sharingan spinning like a madman. Naruto woke up to the sound of a screeching sound, one that sounded like it was from Counselor Haruno. Naruto rubbed the tiredness out of his eyes before going to the bathroom to wash up. After getting washed up, he went out of his bathroom and into the kitchen to fix up something good. He ate some eggs and bacon. Naruto washed his dishes while thinking about his life, the things he has accomplished in such a short amount of time. Then something hit him like a truck. Today was the day he was supposed to join the academy. Should I just send in a shadow clone? Naruto thought, but then soonly banished the idea, as he would probably get a good hearing from Danzo and the Hokage. Troublesome, Naruto said out loud. Naruto looked at the clock and saw that he had an hour to pass by, so he decided he would go to Danzo's house and do a little training. 6-9. Naruto walked in the front door that was conveniently not locked. He went to the back and saw that the training ground was clear. Naruto decided to do his warm-up, which increased since the first time he did it. Every exercise was now 300 and the kilometer run was now 20. It took only 30 minutes, record time too, to get everything done. When Naruto finished his warm-up, he went to fill a huge hole with water chakra, which was a lot harder than said, as he had no water source, so he had to grab the water molecule from the air and make a huge pool, which took a large bit of concentration. After training his water affinity, Naruto looked at the sun, and telling by its position, noticed that it was around 8:30, which was about the time he should be at the academy. Naruto blew a sigh through his nose. He knew the academy was going to be boring, so he was contemplating sending a shadow clone and risk the chance of it acting like a clown and ruining his already horrible street cred. Naruto was interrupted from his thoughts when Danzo walked out of the house and into the training ground. What are you still doing here? Shouldn't you be at the academy? Danzo asked. Yeah, I am heading there now, Sensei Danzo, Naruto said before heading toward the house. Naruto, I want you to relatively hide your abilities. If people know what you could do, they would be at your neck, and nobody wants that, now do we? Danzo asked. Naruto shook his head. He realized that Danzo has been getting awfully cold lately, probably because he wants Naruto to be the best him, but a little compliment here, and there never hurt anyone. Yes, Danzo-sensei, Naruto said, before leaving the vicinity towards the academy. Danzo just stood there, completely still, almost as if he were waiting for something to happen. Orochimaru, you can come out now, Danzo said. What came out of the foliage surrounding the training ground was a woman-looking human. She looked pale, with snake-like eyes and long, black hair. So you didn't notice me, old friend. I was starting to think you lost your touch, Orochimaru said. Danzo shook his head. Do you have what I wanted? If not, leave. I can't be seen with you, Danzo replied to the snake-like human. Why is that, sensei? And yes, I do have what you want, but do you have what I want? Orochimaru asked, licking his lips with his snake-like tongue. Yes, I have the Sharingan. Do you have the rest of the cells? Danzo asked, which sounded like it was getting less patient as the conversation lasted. Yes, I have the rest of the cells. Just one question. What are you going to do with the cells? Especially since you have been asking me to get you the cells in small doses. Why the huge change in the number of cells this time? What is the rush? Orochimaru asked. I have someone whose compatibility with the Hashirama cells is very high. I plan on giving him the same ability I have, Danzo said, while also demonstrating making a plant through his hand. Orochimaru hummed. So, you were finally able to do it? You were able to get the QB container in your palms? Pray tell, how were you able to make that old sensei of mine cooperate? None of your business. Now hand over the cells, Danzo ordered. Orochimaru complied with Danzo's demands, handing over the cells. Danzo gave him 3 eyes, each having a unique pattern of tomos in their eyes. Pleasure doing business with you, old friend. Sorry I couldn't stay longer, but I have places to be, bodies to take over, you know how it is, Orochimaru said, sinking through the ground as his body turned to mud. Danzo took the cells with him and went into the house. 6-9. Naruto finally arrived at the academy via body flicker. Another perk that came with learning and mastering your affinities was the fact that you could change the look of your Shunshin, his lightning as his second highest affinity and water being his highest. He found his lightning affinity the coolest, though, when incorporated into his long-distance Shunshin. He watched as the other kids were dropped off by their parents to go to the academy. He watched as people from Hizashi's clan waved off to his school. He noticed a certain someone walk by himself, no parents waving him off. He identified this person as Sasuke, the only survivor of the Uchiha massacre. What a tragic event, Naruto thought. He had gotten to know Itachi a little bit because of Danzo, so he knew that what Itachi did made no sense. As he wasn't crazy, Itachi was a pacifist. So, what he did that fateful day didn't make any sense, so there had to be something, someone behind the scenes. Naruto, who didn't realize he was staring for so long, realized that everyone was already going inside, and that if he didn't start walking fast now, he would be left behind and late. Naruto hastily walked to the Chunin desk, who was supposed to give him a paper slip, telling him where his classroom is. Naruto noticed a Chunin sitting at a desk, handing papers to the other children. Naruto walked to the desk and asked for a paper slip. Name, the Chunin asked, not looking at the person who asked for a paper slip. Naruto responded, the name is Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said, almost blandly. The Chunin almost spit out the water that she had originally sucked down as she heard Naruto say his name. She quickly wiped her mouth from the moist feeling, before turning her full attention to Naruto. As she got a good look at Naruto, she narrowed her eyes and then proceeded to dig through her desk of paper slips. She, reluctantly, handed over the slip that had his classroom number on it, still staring daggers into Naruto, as if looks could kill. Naruto took the slip smugly, knowing that it would get a rise out of the Chunin. All the Chunin could do was stare daggers into his back as he headed to the classroom he was assigned to. When Naruto arrived at the classroom, he stalked around the large room. Many familiar clans, but no familiar faces as he wasn't very social. Although he did notice Sasuke staring out the window on the corner of the classroom, many of the women were crowding around Sasuke, as if to get to know him. Naruto smiled at the image, fangirls, although Naruto knew that he wasn't going to get any, especially since he was told that he shouldn't try. He would enjoy Sasuke's pain, as he wasn't too much of a fan of the smug boy. He was spoiled since day one, although he knew that looks could be deceiving, and he knew that Sasuke had a lot taken away from him. Even after the massacre, Sasuke never really had to work for anything, getting it instantly after asking just once. Naruto noticed different kids from different clans, one from the Hyuga clan, another from the Nara clan, and one other from the Inuzuka clan. Naruto knew that he would at least get to understand the Nara, as he wasn't a complete idiot from what he heard, as this particular Nara had a high IQ, and he was also the clan heir. Everyone else is probably immature and not near ready for what comes in store as a shinobi. Naruto noticed that the instructor wasn't in the room, so he quickly found a seat, which happened to be at the top, right next to the Hyuga he noticed earlier. As he sat, he was greeted with a pink-haired girl barreling into the classroom, a yellow-haired girl coming just right behind her. "I made it first. That means I get to sit with Sasuke-kun today, Ino Pig." The pink-haired girl yelled at the companion next to her. "No fair, I was here first." The yellow-haired girl fired back at the girl, who, now that Naruto paid attention to her, had a huge forehead. It would probably be an insult to the number 4 if he called it forehead. Next, that came in was the instructor, who had a tick mark at the top of his forehead, which was nothing compared to the pink-haired girl's head. "Can you two please take a seat before I pick it for you?" the instructor said, which made the two girls sprint over to the seats nearest to Sasuke. Naruto inwardly laughed at the misfortune of Sasuke's situation. He would hate it if it were him. Now that everyone is quiet, let's get down to business. This school curriculum will comprise reading, writing, mathematics, science, geography. We will be learning about all of this all week. Lunch will be an hour at 12 o'clock. After that, we will be sparring and other practices to form your ninja careers. Any questions? The Chunin explained. After no one said anything, he went more in depth with what he was going to teach this year, but Naruto tuned him out and went into his mindscape. Naruto spawned out of thin air in a beautiful clearing. Grass covered the entire mindscape. It looked similar to the training ground that Danzo had, although more vegetation covered the field. There, sitting in the middle of the field, was the Kyuubi, with a chain representing his binds to Naruto. He was peacefully sleeping, and if Naruto listened just hard enough, he could hear his little cute snores. To think I could say the big, bad Kyuubi could look cute is something I would have never expected to think of in my entire life, Naruto said, startling the Kyuubi, who looked at Naruto with a surprised expression. The surprised expression soon faded, turning into an annoyed expression. "Didn't we agree that you wouldn't wake me up if I were sleeping? And, hey, don't laugh at me, mortal!" the Kyuubi yelled at Naruto, who was laughing hysterically at the Kyuubi's misfortune. How could I take the big, bad Kyuubi seriously if he is just like your average person? Hell, if I didn't know that you have killed thousands of people in your life, I would take you even less seriously, which is nigh impossible, Naruto said, which just added to the sheer annoyance the Kyuubi had. "You know, I sometimes forget why people seem to hate you and your brothers/sisters so much," Naruto stated, which made the Kyuubi's annoyed expression unreadable. "I mean, if it weren't for how you looked or your size, you probably would be treated like any other normal person. Just comes to show how stupid some humans can be," Naruto said. Naruto watched as the Kyuubi just sat there, silently. "So, you haven't told me your name yet. You gonna tell me?" Or dash, Naruto was cut off by the Kyuubi suddenly, who seemed to be in a sour mood, which was usual. "Leave me alone. I'm tired," the Kyuubi said. Those were the last few words he heard before he was flung out of his mindscape, entering back into the conscious realm. 6-9. I will be showing you the training field which you and your classmates will be training on every day till you graduate, the Chunin, which Naruto, identified as Iruka, said. Iruka led the way to the training ground, the kids following him. As Iruka and the kids finally managed to reach the training ground, he stopped and turned toward his class. "This is the class training ground I was talking about. You and your classmates will be training all kinds of techniques here and will be sparring occasionally," Iruka explained before turning around his back facing the kids once again, and started walking to one section of the training ground. Irika arrived at a training post that looked like this section specialized in training your kunai and shuriken throwing. This part of the training ground, you will train your throwing, as you'll need this when you become a shinobi. Sometimes, even a kunai can kill a kage. Irika said before he picked up a kunai and threw it at one of the posts, hitting it in the dead center, earning him a round of applause from the students. Now, who wants to demonstrate to the class how to throw a shuriken? Irika asked the class. Naruto watched as Sasuke raised his hand instantly. How about you, Sasuke? Here, Irika said, handing over a shuriken to Sasuke, which he gladly took. Sasuke took the shuriken and got into a throwing stance. With all the power and precision that Sasuke could muster, he threw the shuriken directly at the post, which hit it, barely missing the center of the post. Nice job, Sasuke. It seems you have practices in advance. Would anyone else like to try? Irika asked the other students. This time, almost all of the students raised their hands, wishing to test their skills in throwing a shuriken and maybe even impress the class with their skills. How about you, Naruto? Irika asked. This brought Naruto's attention to the conscious realm. He looked at the shuriken and at the post. He remembered Danzo's words clearly in his head. He sighed through his nose and out of his mouth before nodding and grabbing the shuriken from out of Irika's hand. Naruto got into a similar stance as Sasuke and threw it with a lot lesser strength and precision. This time, his shuriken stuck on the second inner ring, which was close to the bullseye, although not as close as Sasuke's shuriken throw attempt. Nice job, Naruto. You almost got the bullseye like Sasuke. Irika praised him, which in return Naruto nodded at the praise. Before quickly grabbing the shuriken, he lobbed at the post and handed it back to Irika. The rest of the day passed as simple as that, although a lot of it was just boring lectures. Naruto was going to send in a shadow clone to the academy, as it would just be a waste of time and training. Naruto knew everything from Danzo's teaching. When Naruto arrived at Danzo's place to train, it was already 2 o'clock. Naruto sighed. School sucked. Naruto watched as Rock Lee went for a swift leg sweep. It would have caught Naruto, but he was way too experienced with fighting people who were way faster than him, so it didn't faze Naruto one bit. Rock Lee, who didn't give up on his advancement, threw another kick. This time, it was aimed at Naruto's head. Naruto, who was easily able to perceive the kick and, on top of that, predict the trajectory of the kick, dodged it simply by bending backward, the kick flying past his body. It was obvious who was superior at taijutsu. Naruto, who wasn't one to let go of opportunities, especially when they were as obvious as this one, grabbed the passing leg before it was able to make its full rotation. Naruto pinned Rock Lee's leg, who was getting more worried at the predicament that he was in by the second. Just tap or I will break it, Naruto said with a smile covering his smile, clearly enjoying the fight he was about to win against Rock Lee. Naruto remembered how he first met Rock Lee, of course, right after the guy got all fussy and ran away, exclaiming that he would find his own apprentice that was going to be even stronger than Danzo's and Kakashi's apprentice, aka me. Naruto came back to real time as he felt a tap on his shoulder. Naruto, looking back at the hand and then the arm and finally the body, saw that the person who was tapping him was an Umbu who was almost impatiently tapping on his shoulder. What do you want? Can't you see that I am busy in a spar? Naruto asked rhetorically, almost immediately going back to pinning Lee down to the floor, who had yet to tap out of the hold. Naruto would praise Lee's persistence, almost as much persistence as himself. The only weakness to Lee's persistence was his sensei, the only difference between Naruto and him. Sorry, Naruto-san, but this is an emergency. The Hokage has personally asked for your assistance, the Umbu explained, which perked Naruto's ears. Okay, humor me. What does the Hokage want? Naruto asked. It is urgent. The Hokage wanted to talk to you now. The Umbu repeated his statement, which annoyed Naruto. He was just having fun, but this Umbu just had to come and ruin it. Naruto sighed through his nose. Fine. The Umbu nodded at Naruto's acceptance, and his body flickered out of the vicinity, his chakra presence completely disappearing. Naruto sighed again before he remembered that he was still pinning Lee. Naruto looked down at Lee and saw that he was knocked unconscious, probably because his body couldn't deal with the pain intake anymore. Naruto sighed. He's fine, right? Naruto thought and questioned himself. He just shook it off, and sunshine too, like the Umbu. 6-9. Naruto teleported right in front of the Hokage. This action put all of the Umbu in the room on high alert. They jumped out at Naruto, expecting an attack from someone who was going to assassinate the Hokage. Before one of them could even touch Naruto, he was already on the other side of the room, avoiding the conflict that was going to erupt if the Umbu had caught him. You really should keep a leash on them, Hokage-sama, Naruto said, which sounded a little disrespectful, but Naruto was never one for formalities. Indeed. Anyways, on to business. I have another mission for you, except this one is more challenging and we don't have too much information on the mission. We also have a shortage of men to send out, so we are sending you in. In caution, this mission is a B ranked because of said lack of information. Hiruzen explained the details, never taking his eyes off the papers he was signing. One other thing before you leave, can you stop sending shadow clones to school? It won't be due if you send them to school. How else will you build a relationship with your peers? Hiruzen asked Naruto, who was still contemplating what he would bring to the mission. What? Oh yeah, sure. Naruto quickly dismissed Hiruzen's complaints. Can I leave now? Naruto asked quickly. Hiruzen just looked up at Naruto before rubbing his nose and dismissing him with a wave of his hand. Naruto smiled before body flickering out of the office, just leaving Hiruzen behind with his 4 Umbu. You know, if it were anybody else, and they did have the intent to kill me, I would have been dead, Hiruzen said, which gained him a few groans from the Umbu who had failed to reprimand Naruto. I expect you all to be on high alert next time, or you're going to clean all of Konohamaru's draws, Hiruzen said, which gained him more groans from the other Umbu members in the room. Hiruzen pulled out his pipe before igniting it. Let's hope Naruto will come back safe. They didn't have any information on the camp other than its location. 6-9. Naruto was running along with the huge trees. These trees were only specific to Konohagakure. Other than that, you wouldn't find these anywhere else. These trees were originally made by Hashirama, who wanted to conceal all of the fire country because it was mostly all just flat land, which wasn't very secretive for shinobi. Naruto was glad that he was born in Konoha. Everywhere else sucked because the climate or weather sucked. In Kumo, it was way too cold. In Kiri, there was too much mist everywhere and it was hard to see. In the sand, it was, well, too sandy. In the rock, it was too rocky. Konoha, on the other hand, was nigh perfect. It was warm all year round, there was plenty of water and trees, and the place was huge. Naruto was content with where he lived and wouldn't change it for the world. He abruptly stopped when he noticed the huge camp in front of him. If Naruto was correct, he was told that the camp was normal size, but this was unreal. This place looked similar to 2 of the normal camps that he usually exterminated. Not to add to the fact that this place was bordering the land of rivers wasn't good either. He just hoped that there was a patrolling Umbu squad near him if something bad happened, and the mission went south. Naruto sent in 10 shadow clones, each using the Hinge no Jutsu to turn into different animals and creatures to blend into the wild and to sneak into the building. While his 10 clones were searching inside, he, along with 4 other clones, were patrolling the camp from the outside, trying to read the patterns. Naruto waited another 2 hours to scope out the entire place and to thoroughly read the patterns of the place. He wanted to make sure that this would go as clean as possible, so he had just the idea. Naruto, forming the hand seal for the hinge, morphed into what seemed to be a rat. He snuck into a small crack he had made and met a long hallway. Occasionally, the large hallway would be flanked by both sides with doors, most likely leading to rooms that were meant to sleep. That wasn't Naruto's main focus. Naruto's main focus was to get past the vault that one of his clones had spotted along the way of spying. Naruto walked a little further down the hall, took a left, and then a right. Occasionally, Naruto would have to hide in the shadows to avoid getting caught by one of the night watchers who were patrolling around the building. Thankfully, unlike his first time exterminating bandit camp, he didn't get caught. When Naruto reached the vault, he formed into a spider and crawled through the vault key slot. What Naruto was met with was surprising, to say the least. The room was covered in Rio, stacks and stacks of just Rio. Naruto had hit the jackpot, and he would take up the chance to get all this Rio. Naruto opened a scroll, which popped out another scroll, which read on it, Rio. Naruto put all the Rio that he collected on missions in here. After a year of straight-up only doing exterminate bandit camps, he had managed to get his own little fortune. Naruto collected all of the Rio in the scroll and put the Rio scroll back into the original scroll. Next, he saw a bunch of scrolls. A lot of them were just for jutsus for affinities that he didn't have, although it was something that Naruto was definitely not going to pass upon. He took the one scroll that read, Fire Release, Flame Whirlwind. Description: fire erupts around the user's body in a spiraling manner, which is then launched with his hands towards the target. Once the technique hits the target, the opponent is sent into the air in a spiraling manner, and their body burns into ashes. Fire Release, Great Dragon Fire Technique. Description: the user compresses a large amount of chakra built up inside their body and changes it into a dragon head-shaped fireball. The user then skillfully manipulates that great fire and attacks their opponent. Even outside of the attack range, its power and reliability are stressed. The flames have a high temperature, as they can create an upward movement of air currents, which in turn can give rise to thunderclouds. A master of this technique can fire off several flames in succession, and anyone caught in the technique could potentially be reduced to ashes. Earth Release, Ground Shaking Technique. Description: using this technique, the user sends chakra into the ground to cause the ground to shake. The spot of the ground to affect can be controlled. The magnitude of shaking is rather minor though, only capable of probably slightly unbalancing the opponent. If done while the opponent is not on firm ground, it may cause him or her to fall. This technique is usually used for distraction. Earth Release, Earth Spear. Description: after forming the needed snake hand seal, Domu will harden the body using the earth element. This provides greater defense against attack and will strengthen the arm to increase its striking ability. Like other Doton-based jutsu, it is weak against right-on attacks. Naruto found many other jutsu like these, each being a different element than the others. He skimmed over the rest of the scrolls, copied each and every other one, and sealed the scroll he copied off of. It was only after copying 10 scrolls and skimming over the rest that a scroll got his attention. The scroll read the words, Summoning Technique, Naruto's eyes raised exponentially. A summoning scroll was rare. Even rarer was a scroll to be left behind. It looked like it hadn't been opened in, well, ever. Naruto picked off the scroll from the rest of the scroll. He wiped down the dust and dirt that covered the rest of the words. Now, in all its glory, it read the octopus summoning. That's weird. I have never heard of anything like an octopus summoning. Then again, octopuses kind of need water to survive, so no wonder it has never been used. We don't live underwater, Naruto explained to himself, as no one was listening to him, so the only audience was himself. He was going to throw the scroll away, but he was curious about the contents. It wasn't every day you found a summoning scroll, especially one that wasn't, or rather, hasn't been used. Well, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. Naruto unfurled the scroll to peer into its contents. Out of all the things that he expected to happen, he wasn't expecting to fall over, unconsciousness taking over his body. 6-9. Naruto awoke in a weird place. His surroundings were a lot different, and it wasn't anything like his mindscape. If Naruto had to guess, something about that scroll did something to him. Naruto was interrupted from his thoughts when he heard a loud snore. He turned around, and almost immediately sweat dropped. There, in all his glory, was the Kyuubi, sleeping like the big old furry idiot he was. He was laying on his back, his stomach exposed to the world. Naruto wanted to yell to gain the attention of the QB, but the predicament that he and the QB were in was just too, I don't know, laughable. It took a minute, but the QB finally woke up from his deep slumber. What the hey? Where am I? What did you do with the mindscape? The QB yelled in frustration. Naruto's sweat dropped. He was acting like not even a second ago he was sleeping peacefully, not a care in the world. Do you have a personality disorder? Or dash? Naruto was caught off in the growl of the QB. Naruto took the hint as to shut up. What did you do to the mindscape? The QB repeated himself, getting more annoyed by the second. Naruto hummed. I honestly don't know. I didn't do anything to the mindscape. I touched a scroll that read an octopus summoning and then dash. Naruto was interrupted by the QB once more. Wait, did you say an octopus summoning? I know you did not just say octopus summoning, right? The QB said, which if Naruto wasn't mistaken, sounded a little tipsy, almost nervous. QB, are you nervous? Naruto asked. Me? Nervous? No. The QB tried to reassure Naruto, which was not helping his case, as the more he talked, the more nervous he sounded. Naruto turned around from the QB, looking for any clue on where they could be. The place seemed like an ocean, almost, although it couldn't be because he was breathing normally fine. While Naruto was walking, directionless, the QB was following him, almost like a lost puppy. He was definitely going to make fun of the QB after this, acting almost like a chicken. While Naruto was walking, he was looking up, too busy thinking about where he could be, that he didn't see that he stepped on something, or rather, someone. Who dares bother the great Kraken, ruler of all seas, ruler of all women squids? Naruto heard the voice of a thing under him. He looked down to see a huge squid-like creature. A Kraken? Ruler of the seas? Never heard of it. Naruto replied to the giant squid, which almost made the squid fall over comically. Well, what do you mean you have never heard of me? I was the one who destroyed the Jubi, along with the Sage of Six Paths. The giant squid yelled out in exasperation. The Sage of Six Paths? Isn't that a myth? And even if it was real, that was like what? 1,000 years ago, Naruto exclaimed, not believing the huge squid's claims one bit. 1 millennium? Are you sure it has been that long since I last talked to someone? The Kraken questioned Naruto. Naruto just shook his head yes, almost dumbfounded. Then Naruto remembered something the Kraken said. Hey, what about the ruler of all women squids? Are you some perverted squid? Naruto questioned the squid. The Kraken laughed at the little boy. Pervert? No, I'm pretty sure you mean the super, duper, ultra pervert. And, wait a minute, Kurama, is that you? The Kraken asked the huge demon fox that sat right behind Naruto, who seemed to be shaking his paws over his eyes, almost as if to protect him. Wait, so your name is Kurama? Sick name dash. Naruto wasn't able to finish his sentence before he turned around and burst out laughing at the pitiful scene that lay unfolding. The QB, or Kurama, was quivering in terror to this perverted huge squid. Hey Kurama, what are you doing? And look how big you got. Last time I saw you, you were just yacht tall, and the Sage of Six Paths just died. The Kraken yelled out in excitement. Naruto guessed that after being isolated for millennia, seeing a familiar face would help you a little to cope. Naruto, who stayed on ground, held his sides to hold in the laughter because his sides hurt like hell because of the laughter. He watched as the Kraken poked Kurama, or the QB, as he quivered at the sight of the Kraken. Kurama, you good? The Kraken asked curiously at the shivering furball. Why are you shaking so much? What happened? Did this little human hurt you? Do I need to teach him a lesson? I didn't mean to eat the squid, I swear. It was just in the way of the humans. Kurama screamed out at the Kraken, who sat there surprised. Naruto couldn't hold in the laughter any longer and let it all out again. His sides were hurting even more now because of the comedic scene that lay ahead of him. What? The Kraken asked. He was now the one to be wondering what was happening. After a couple of minutes of Naruto just laughing uncontrollably, he was able to get his laughter under control. So, Where are we, Arrow Kraken? And why is Kurama, so scared of you? Naruto questioned the Kraken, although almost went into another fit of laughter at remembering the scene of the quivering Kurama. Speaking of Kurama, he was sitting with a straight posture, almost as if not even 2 minutes ago he was quivering like a coward. Well, we're in the squid realm, of course, home of all squid summons, the Kraken said very dramatically too. He was shaking 2 of his 10 tentacles. Then where are the other squids? Naruto asked, a sweat drop forming at the idiotic behavior of the Kraken. It was the Kraken's turn to be confused. I don't really know. I've been lonely ever since. Well, as lonely as a squid could be with the most untalkative master to ever exist. The Kraken said mysteriously. Wait, so you do have someone else down here with you? Who and where? Naruto questioned the Kraken. The Kraken laughed nervously. Well, about that. Master doesn't like visitors, especially weak ones. Naruto frowned. How come I can't see him? Well, let's just say he is dreaming. A very great dream, the Kraken said. Naruto could tell that the Kraken was trying to avoid the situation, so he took the hint and didn't ask him about it again. If the Kraken didn't want him pestering around, then he wouldn't. So how do we leave? Naruto asked the obvious question. Easy, you just sign the squid contract and go through 3 trials, the Kraken said nonchalantly. What? Naruto half asked, half yelled, which earned him a chuckle from the Kraken. I'm joking about the trials part. That is something the Snake Clan would probably make you do, but I don't have enough time to do any trials. Especially after the first person who did the trials, the Kraken said, although the last bit was more of an afterthought and was almost mumbled. So, all you have to do is sign this contract. The Kraken laid out his 1 tentacle out of 10, which happened to have scroll on it. The scroll was unfurled and was completely blank. It had nothing special written on it. It looked like your average scroll. Naruto looked back at Kurama, who he completely forgot existed during his interaction with this perverted Kraken. Should I do it? Naruto asked Kurama, which surprised the Kraken and Kurama. What? Why are you asking me? Kurama asked Naruto. The boy and he barely knew each other, and he was asking if he should live or die. Why was this boy so weird? He reminded Kurama about what the Sage of 6 Paths told him before he died. Something that Kurama promised to achieve, but after 3 centuries, lost hope in humanity because of the way they treated him and his siblings. Was it true, the prophecy? Kurama wondered to himself. Kurama humphed, almost like a child, which was nothing like his age. Fine, go ahead. This annoying Kraken is pretty strong, so he should be of help for us. Kurama reasoned with Naruto, which was enough for Naruto to sign the scroll. They all just sat there in silence, waiting for Naruto to sign the scroll. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. So, how do I sign the scroll? This made both the Kraken and Kurama facepalm. Just bite your thumb, write your name, and then bite all your fingers and make a hand mark, the Kraken explained, making sure not to miss a step so this idiot human didn't mess something up. Naruto stopped rubbing his neck sheepishly and bit down on his right-hand fingers. He signed his name down on the scroll and pressed down on the papers with all of his bloody fingers, making a huge finger imprint on the scroll. The Kraken smiled, while also grabbing the scroll and folding it up and handing it over to Naruto. I have nowhere to keep this, so you should probably hold it. Just ask Kurama or someone the hand seals the summoning jutsu and summon me or any squid, if there is any, whenever you want. Just make sure whatever you do, never put in all your chakra to spawn my master. If you do, things won't go well for anyone, not you, and most definitely not the person you are facing. Another thing I noticed is that you aren't that strong. Although you do happen to be strong for your age, you still aren't good enough for my standards. Whenever you could drop by at my summoning realm. Time here is slower than in the real world. A month here is just a day in the real world. I think the Kraken finished speaking and left it at that. What Naruto felt next was the same feeling he felt when he touched the scroll. He fell over, consciousness finally taking over his body again. Naruto woke up to the sound of banging. He looked over to the sound of the banging and saw that he was still in the vault. He had no time to think before the vault started opening. Before it opened, Naruto hinged into a spider. He didn't have enough time to mask his presence, though, so his chakra was obvious. If there was a sensor, then he was screwed. When the vault opened, many people came rushing in. A kunai came soaring into the vault, hitting just right next to him. Naruto's suspicions were correct. They had a sensor. He was not going to get past this without getting a scratch or two. Naruto jumped from his position and ran out of the vault. Only one person came chasing him. Naruto, assuming it was the censor of the group. Naruto watched as he called out that the spider was just a hinge. There was no point in keeping the hinge anymore, so he got out his hinge form. He ran as fast as he could. Although the mission was to exterminate them all, they were stronger than Naruto anticipated, so he would have to attack at a later date. The man threw a kunai, which lodged itself deep into his left arm. Naruto couldn't feel the pain, but what he could feel was the poison stretching from the wound at a rapid pace. Kurama, where are you? I need you to attack the poison as fast as you can. If you don't, I'll have to amputate my arm. Naruto thought loudly in his head, talking to the Kyuubi through his thoughts. I am working on it, Naruto. This poison is a lot stronger than it looks. It is spreading fast. We're going to have to do that one thing we swore we wouldn't do until we mastered it to get rid of the poison, the Kyuubi explained to Naruto, who was running like a madman. Fine, just do it fast, Naruto said in acceptance. A surge of demonic chakra came forth and shrouded around Naruto. Although it was only 2 tails that formed on Naruto's behind, it should be enough to cancel out the poison. Kurama, why does it hurt so bad? Naruto said quickly. I don't know. My chakra should be able to kill the poison, unless... Kurama started. Unless what? Naruto yelled, slapping another kunai away with one of his 2 tails. Naruto, you were betrayed. The more chakra I put into the wound, the faster it spreads. Someone knows that you are a Jinchuriki. They knew you were coming. Get the hell out of there. Kurama screamed into Naruto's head. Naruto was ratted out, and he would kill the person who ratted him out if his name weren't Naruto Uzumaki. He smacked down another kunai. Naruto looked ahead of him and was further surprised by the number of people who were cornering him. Shit, Kurama, who could have ratted me out? The only people who knew were the 4 Umbu, the Hokage, and the councilman. Kurama, what should I do? Naruto was only met with silence. Until, go all out. Those were the words that Kurama mumbled from his mindscape. Naruto almost smiled at those words when he looked back at the event. Naruto formed the snake hand seal. It's worth a try, water release. Exploding water colliding wave. Naruto screamed out as he spat out a huge wave of water from his mouth. The water came crashing down on the bandits in front of him. The bandit camp was flooded with at least 100 meters worth of water. Noticing that an escape route was made, he shined out of the building. Naruto watched as the whole bandit camp was flooded with a large amount of water. Naruto just sat there in the cold grass as he watched the destruction of just one of his many jutsu that he was able to perfect. It almost made him cry at the beauty of the jutsu. This moment would have been perfect if it weren't for the fact that the stinging feeling in his arm was still present, or the fact that he could feel a presence coming towards him. With his arm, he wouldn't be able to move it or use it because he overloaded it with Kurama's chakra, which worsened the side effects. Naruto watched as a man jumped right in front of him, sword in one hand, kunai in another. He watched as he walked up to him. Wow, I was told this would be hard and that I could have died. The man who paid me must have been exaggerating then. The man spoke out. Naruto just lay there, almost as if he were dead. Quiet, are we? Well, it doesn't matter anymore. I'll kill you where you stand there. Sit, the man said, as he went to stab Naruto. What the man wasn't expecting was to be met with pressure as he went to stab down. What are you doing? Already? The man yelled as he went to put more pressure into stabbing Naruto. However, it didn't stab into his head, but rather the left arm of Naruto. The man lifted his sword and watched Naruto's arm sit there, detached from Naruto's body. The man picked up the lifeless arm and waved at Naruto with it. "Hey there, man. Can you attach me back?" The man said jokingly. He laughed. "Well, do you have any more words?" He asked Naruto, who managed to give out a nod through all the pain. "Okay, so you can talk," the man said to Naruto, who was still unresponsive. Naruto raised his good arm and formed this weird hand seal. Kaboom! Those were the last words Naruto announced before the man who held the arm of Naruto saw that there was a seal attached to the arm. It read the kanji boom. Before the man could process what happened, the arm exploded, the man's entire top half also exploding with the arm. The pain completely subdued Naruto, and he fell unconscious again. If he were awake for just a second longer, he would have seen a masked man jump down from the tree he sat in, hold his body, and run along with the trees, carrying Naruto's body bridle style. He ran in the direction of Konoha. 6-9. Naruto woke up to the sound of something beeping. His first thought was what had happened, but after a rush of memories, his question was already answered. Naruto's next question was where he could be, but the beeping sound sounded familiar, so his first guess was the hospital. "Kurama, you there?" Naruto asked the QB. After a couple of minutes of no response, he forgoes asking Kurama and looking at his surroundings. His first guess of being in a hospital was quickly swept away due to the color and texture of the walls he was surrounded by. They weren't white and marble-looking, but rather gray and clear, with no outspoken texture. He looked further into the room in which he was hospitalized and saw that there was nothing else except for his heart monitor and a singular door, which probably led out of the room he was in. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door creaking. Who walked in was Danzo, his sensei. "Sensei Danzo, what are you doing here?" Naruto asked Danzo, who had an indifferent expression plastered on his face. "I am here because you almost died. I had saved you before you died on the cold floor. I took out as much poison as I could and let the Nine Tails do the rest of the work for me. Unfortunately, you had lost your left arm in the process. Thankfully, Hiruzen doesn't know, so we could do a transplant. That is, if you want to keep your ninja career," Danzo explained, which had Naruto thinking at light speed. Lose his ninja career? Hiruzen would never, although knowing how soft he was on him, he might just do it. Naruto would do anything to continue his ninja career. He was nothing before Danzo's teaching. "I would do anything to stay a shinobi," Naruto replied to Danzo, who flashed a smirk that Naruto didn't have the fortune to see. "Whose arm will you be using in the experiment?" Naruto questioned, almost fearfully at the aspect of losing the only thing he loved, his shinobi career. "That doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you get this arm and the experiment works, so I don't lose my most trusted shinobi and student," Danzo said, grabbing a syringe and plugging it into the cord that was plugged into Naruto's arm. "What are you going to do with that?" Naruto questioned Danzo, but before he could get the answer, Danzo had already squeezed the liquid out of the syringe and into the cord connected to Naruto's arm. Danzo had made sure to dose the anesthesia 10 times than any normal person could take, as he knew that Naruto had an awful, yet good resistance to the anesthesia. "Naruto, are you awake?" Danzo questioned Naruto. When he received no answer for quite some time, he got to work. He grabbed the jar he had originally been holding, and he grabbed the white thing. He made sure he attached it to Naruto's little stub carefully, as to not make a mistake, as that would ruin the entire experiment, and he would have to start over, which wouldn't have been good. Before he connected the little white arm, he had cut the burnt little stub with a kunai and attached the white arm to the little stub. He used fire chakra to connect the stub with the white arm and sealed the wound. He made sure that he connected the nerves in the arm with Naruto's nerves. After the nerves were connected, he checked everything else and saw that everything was okay. His heartbeat was normal, and his body wasn't rejecting the new Hashirama cells, which was good. He wrapped the arm around with bandages, kind of like his arm. He didn't want Hiruzen knowing that he attached a new arm to Naruto. If Hiruzen found out, then not only would he be executed, but Naruto would probably lose his career, which both were neither good for his plans of ascending the Hokage throne. Normally, he would just plug out Naruto's eyes and give him Sharingan eyes, as with his chakra reserves. It would make barely any difference, even with the high chakra consumption. However, he didn't want Hiruzen to get suspicious and looked into his experiments on Naruto. Naruto was the best test subject, and with Naruto's determination and prodigy-like learning, he was meant to be the strongest shinobi to ever exist. With the new cells, he should have a new affinity to earth release and an even stronger affinity to water, which was already on the likes of his first and only sensei, Tobirama. With the cells, Naruto's affinity would be as strong, or even stronger than Tobirama's. Naruto also showed a high affinity to wood release, especially since his experiments before showed that Naruto would have an affinity for wood release, sort of like himself. If Danzo was anyone else, he might have felt giddy inside, maybe even celebrating his success. Naruto was a sort of diamond in the rough. It was almost tempting to give him a Sharingan, but sadly he wouldn't, or at the least, not yet. Danzo was thankful for the man that he paid, because if he didn't, none of this would have been possible. He wouldn't have been able to attach the Hashirama cells to Naruto, so Danzo thanked the man who was now in the afterlife. Now, all Naruto had to do was consume all of Hashirama's chakra, and he would be able to use wood release. With Naruto's increased reserves with the Hashirama cells, he would probably be able to make 1,000 clones without breaking a sweat, which is an accomplishment on its own. Speaking of clones, Danzo got an idea. What if he had Naruto use 100 clones specifically to get better chakra control, while the rest work on Fuinjutsu or get better at wood release? That sounded like a great idea, and with the Nine Tails as his healer, Naruto would be the ultimate force to not be reckoned with. That would all be for plans, though, as Hiruzen would force Naruto to stay in the academy whilst he should be a Chunin, maybe even a Tokubetsu Jonin already. Danzo could only imagine what a powerhouse Naruto would be when he was in his prime. It almost made him scared. That didn't matter now. Naruto would feel in debt to him, would feel as if he owed him. Exactly what he wanted. He smiled a rare smile. He couldn't wait for what the future would hold. It was an hour later that Naruto finally woke up from his surgery. "You have finally woken up," Danzo stated the obvious, which Naruto just nodded lazily at. He held his head from the sudden intake of memories. His clone had popped at the academy, which meant that the academy had finally ended. Speaking of the academy, nothing special had happened except for the fact that Naruto was seen on similar levels to Sasuke, the Uchiha prince, on some occasions, but people just found that as a fluke. However, that wasn't as important as what was happening right now. Was the surgery successful? Naruto wondered to Danzo out loud, who just shook his head. "Find out for yourself. Go and check out your new arm," Danzo stated, while also waving his hand at the wall, inclining Naruto to punch it. Naruto lazily flexed his hand while getting up off the bed and headed to the wall that Danzo had waved towards. The wall was still that ugly gray color. He would enjoy wiping that disgusting color from existence. Naruto pulled back his arm, almost like he was winding up, and threw the punch with as much strength that he could muster. Something unexpected happened when Naruto threw the punch, and it dented the wall, completely making a miniature hole into the wall. "Well, what kind of arm did you use?" Naruto asked Danzo. Naruto was amazed at the newfound power in his left arm. Naruto, however, was only met with a strange question. "Can I trust you?" Danzo asked. Naruto paused for a second before answering the peculiar question. "Yeah, of course you can. You were the one who made me." "Well, me," Naruto answered. Danzo flashed a smile. "It is made out of cells from someone who had unbelievable strength, a man renounced as the god of shinobi, a man who trained the second god of shinobi, a man who was feared all around the shinobi world, Hashirama Senju," Danzo finished. Naruto's eyes widened to huge proportions. "H, how did you get cells from Lord First?" Naruto questioned, although he feared the answer to said question. "I asked for a favor from an old friend, and here we are," Danzo answered Naruto's question. Do you know what this means, Naruto? Danzo asked, almost rhetorically. What? What does it mean? Naruto asked, curiosity taking over his natural reflexes. This means you can't tell anyone, for if they find out, they will kill not only me, but you as treason for being a holder of Hashirama's cells, Danzo explained. Naruto realized just how deep he was in this, and realized that he was in no way able to escape because of how deep. Does that mean I will be able to use the infamous wood release? Naruto asked, although he dreaded the fact that he took another man's cells and fused with them. He was excited, almost happy at the aspect of being able to use the famed wood release. In most likely scenarios, yes. But that isn't the only thing you will gain from the cells. You will gain an even higher healing factor, gain an affinity for earth release, an increase into your already large reserves, and an increase in your already high affinity toward water release, Danzo told Naruto, who just sat there quietly. Naruto was surprised about the last parts, as he almost forgot that Hashirama had an affinity for earth and had large reserves. But something in Naruto didn't sit well with him. Something that made him feel evil as if he was no better than that he swore against. Something about stealing cells from a dead man almost felt evil to Naruto. Naruto knew that one day he would have to cross the line of good and bad in his eyes, but he never knew, or rather, wanted to know what for. This just felt way too far. Well, since I can trust you to keep a secret, I think I might have to tell you about my secret organization, Root. In case I die, you must take care of it. So, you'll also be learning about Root, the operations, and finally, how to take care of it, Danzo finished. Are you ready to see it? Danzo asked Naruto, who was more unsure than he ever was in his life. Do you think I am ready? Naruto asked Danzo as he was twirling his fingers and scratching the back of his head, his legs impatiently banging against the ground repeatedly. Danzo could tell one thing. He was nervous extremely at that, either at disappointing him or the aspect of being evil. If I was unsure and didn't think you were ready to learn about the organization, I would have never told you, Danzo said, which relieved Naruto of the stress slightly. A figurative, small weight seemed to have magically lifted off of Naruto's shoulders. Although a lot of weight seemed to remain, it made breathing a lot easier for Naruto. It was the first time in a while that Danzo had praised him, so that was a bonus. Determination was flaming into Naruto's eyes, the praise being the fan, as it fanned his flames to not disappoint his sensei, Danzo. Naruto nodded, which Danzo presumed meant that Naruto was ready. Danzo waved Naruto to follow him, which Naruto kindly obliged. Naruto followed Danzo. After getting past the door, they hurried along the hallway as they passed many other doors and people who wore these strange masks with kanjis on the left side of the mask, reading the word root. At the end of the large, dark, and creepy hall was one huge, singular room. The only thing that was in this room was a desk with papers on top of it. The chair was more like a throne. This is where I work, and where you will work when I am dead or incapable of working, Danzo explained. Danzo waited a couple of seconds for Naruto to process the entire room before starting his pace again. Naruto watched as Danzo turned back and walked down the same hallway they walked from. Naruto hastily walked to get to Danzo's side again. After reaching Danzo's side, he fell deep in his thoughts as he pondered his next steps. Right now, he was proficient in 2 chakra natures, so he would pay most of his attention to unlocking the wood release. But that shouldn't take up all of his time, so he would probably study Fuinjutsu to master Tobarama's amazing technique and master what his father couldn't. Speaking about his father, he should probably get down to deciphering the Rasengan, but he should probably just ask Kakashi to help him with that. Then the only thing left is to get to know Kurama and his summon some more. He would spend most of his time in his summon realm, as that would be most beneficial. He probably should tell Danzo about his new summons, now that Naruto thought about it. Hey, Sensei Dash. Naruto was interrupted by Danzo, who made his way through another corridor. Call me Danzo. You don't always have to call me Sensei, Naruto, Danzo said before cutting another corner. Okay, so, on the mission before I got caught and lost my arm, I found plenty of scrolls that had jutsus on them. But that wasn't the best part, Naruto said. He waited a couple of seconds to see if Danzo was listening. I found a scroll with a summons on it, Naruto said, and Danzo had made a complete 180, looking like he was truly paying attention to Naruto. Summons? Like what kind? Danzo asked hastily. Well, I found the octopus's summoning. It is pretty cool, although they have this perverted octopus as a boss summons, so I guess it's a downside, Naruto said as he stared at Danzo's singular, lone eye. 6-9. In a certain summoning realm, a certain octopus sneezed profusely. I guess some hot octopus is talking about me, cool. The giant kraken said as he fiddled with his tentacles playfully. 6-9. Danzo just stared at Naruto before nodding, turning around, and starting walking again. This had confused Naruto, as he couldn't tell what Danzo was thinking. He didn't believe anyone could at this point. He continued to follow Danzo around the compound. Are you familiarizing yourself with the compound? Danzo asked Naruto as he went through another corridor. After receiving no answer, he continued, I will quiz you on the compound location if I find you too inadequate. Naruto nodded, although deep inside, he was anime crying because he didn't want to have to take a stupid test. After a couple more minutes of just plainly walking, not chatter involved, they had finally made a complete 360 around the entire compound. Danzo looked at Naruto before speaking. We have explored the entire compound. This is a place you will eat, sleep, and train in your entire time. The only time you are permitted to leave is when you go to your summons world, when you are meant to go on a mission, or when you send a clone to school. Danzo finished and waited a count of seconds after to see if Naruto had any questions. Naruto did have something on his mind, though. Yeah, another thing I have to say, there's a perk for my summons. So, he said that, for some reason, time is slower there. So, a month in the summon realm is about 1 week in the real world, Naruto said, which ended up making both very, very quiet. And for quite some time, too. Can you take me? Danzo asked curiously, probably because anything like this was surely supposed to be used and abused to its fullest extent. I mean, sure. Why not? Although the QB will also be there, so don't do anything that'll get them both mad, Naruto said. They waited a couple of minutes. Are you going to bring us there? Danzo asked. Well, you see, I kind of don't know the hand seals for summoning, Naruto said in quick succession. Why didn't you just say so? The hand seals are dash, Danzo said, as he started to demonstrate the hand seals necessary for the summoning jutsu. Boar dog bird monkey ram. You want to do those necessary hand seals, but you want to do it where your thumb is also bleeding. If you don't do these necessary hand seals, with the bleeding it won't work. Oh, and you have to put your hands on the ground too, Danzo said as an afterthought. Okay, Naruto said quickly, before biting his thumb, doing the necessary hand seals, and slamming his hands on the ground. Summoning technique. A small array spawned around him, and so did a cloud of smoke. Once the smoke cleared up, Naruto and a small octopus were the only ones there standing, not including Danzo. Naruto watched as the octopus seemed to encloud his whole head with a bubble of water. That was probably what was keeping him from suffocating due to the air. Can you reverse summon me and my sensei, Danzo? Naruto asked the octopus, who just seemingly nodded. No complaints were necessary. They both took one tentacle of the squid and vanished. No way of tracing them to their destination unless you took the same route.